when a proud army commander completely humiliates the third prince, calling him worthless trash and a dirty rat simply because of his low-born mother. The prince is usually weak and quietly endures the constant abuse, but not today. A chilling, murderous aura suddenly wraps around the soldier. Then the prince picks up a simple twig and warns that insults must be paid for with death, but the real story starts a bit before this. Meet Prince Callian Lane Caris, born to a lowly servant and the king, third line to the throne of Caris, the most dominant kingdom on the continent. He is weak, humiliated, and completely isolated inside the palace. His half-siblings look right through him. Imperial knights call him a rat, even the palace staff treat him like a ghost, but nobody knows that his entire destiny just shifted. Inside that weak body, a new soul has awakened. It is Baron Secretia, a legendary monarch who lost his entire kingdom in his past. Baron ruled Secretia with strength and honor until a strange artifact, known as the Axis of Time, appeared in his court, sparking a devastating war. Caris demanded the relic. Secretia refused to yield. The brutal conflict erupted instantly. Almost as if Caris had been plotting an invasion all along, Baron fought bravely. But he was ultimately slain by Commander Arson on a ruined, bloody battlefield. The mastermind pulling the strings was the ruthless tyrant of Caris, Blanche, yet Baron woke up 10 years in the past, trapped inside the body of this enemy prince. Own nation, he has a slim window of opportunity, and it is closing fast. The real Callian is scheduled to be assassinated in just a couple of months. Before his 15th birthday, the ruthless queen herself ordered the hit, and Baron knows this perfectly. He also uncovers a hidden secret that none of the servants suspect. Callian was secretly a mage with 3 hidden mana circles near his heart, but tapping into them triggers a lethal agony that might destroy him before any assassin. Realizing he is out of options, Baron makes a bold choice to stop hiding. He shears off his long hair, stands tall, and when Blanche hurls a deadly knife at a defenseless servant during breakfast, Baron intercepts the blade barehanded, bleeding, smiling, and calmly sliding the weapon right back to Blanche without uttering a single sound. The stunned second prince stands frozen, utterly shocked by this. He has never seen such defiance. Down on the training field, a commander named Abel, who is fiercely loyal to the faction supporting Blanche, boldly calls Callian a worthless bastard right in front of the entire assembly. The old prince would have cowered and begged for mercy, but Baron just grins, grabbing a wooden branch while questioning Pabel about his duties. Before the soldier can even finish speaking, the prince strikes from behind, wielding nothing but a simple stick. He effortlessly disarms the veteran knight, sending his sword flying. The defeated Pabel drops to his knees, desperately pleading for mercy right in front of his stunned troops. He tearfully apologizes, frantically swearing he never meant to commit treason. As Pabel grovels in the dirt, Baron merely looks down at him with absolute disgust, shaking in fear with his face pressed against the cold earth. Pabel swears he will never forget this ultimate humiliation dealt by the third prince. Later, Yan, the prince's loyal servant, watches in complete shock and asks why. A master who only went out for light physical training returned with a stallion. The servant trails off as Baron cheerfully holds a sleek black horse by the. Baron hands the reins over to Yan, explaining that he found the horse on his way back and named it Corvo. Yan quickly asks where Baron has been after all. The intense clash between the prince and commander finally settled down. Baron spotted a horse and asked what was wrong. The creature refused the knight's command since nobody could tame it. It was a fiercely powerful horse, belonging directly to Prince Blanche, which gave him a sudden brilliant idea. His servant Yan was shocked that Baron brought Blanche's horse back completely on his own, laughing as he claims Blanche has allowed absolutely anyone to use it, quietly whispering to his personal trainer to hide what had happened with Pabel. Trembling, a terrified Yan whispers his deep fear that the second prince will surely find out. Baron just smiles. Everything will be fine, no matter what. Suddenly, a sharp, stabbing pain strikes deep in his chest once again, startling both of his vassals. Clutching his chest, Baron wonders if he pushed his body too far. His servant asks if the intense endurance training was too much, but the prince calmly dismisses it, claiming he simply had a good time himself with someone afterward. Meanwhile, a hidden figure secretly observing the trio quickly slips away through the shadows to avoid being spotted, while Baron sends dinner. A seated figure in a garden gazebo receives information from another, holding a delicate, beautiful flower. He remarks that even lowly worms will squirm Stepped on, then he violently crushes the bloom, stating that no matter how much a useless bastard like Baron struggles, he can never hope to change his low origins, tossing. Casting the ruined petals aside, he decides it would be boring to simply pressure and kill him. For now, they will only watch. Soon, the three princes gather for another tense meal. Baron realizes he cannot get used to this incredibly tense, suffocating atmosphere despite being forced to sit here daily. Blanche looks unusually quiet today, wearing a deeply thoughtful expression. Baron notices his silence, wondering why Blanche seems so discouraged today, as he sips his wine, silently wondering if the powerful queen and the Viscount are late because of him struggling to hide his anxious expression. Suddenly, the heavy dining room doors swing wide open. Everyone rises instantly and turns their eyes toward the entrance. Baron catches a scent, and trust me, he remembers this exact smell. He immediately recognizes the elegant figure entering the dining hall. It is the queen, looking absolutely stunning in a green gown with her vibrant baby blue hair, Celeste Bryson. The second queen and current ruler of Caris holds all the real power over this royal kingdom. After the former queen passed away from illness, Celeste seized the throne, using her family wealth and massive influence to completely control the royal knights. Most nobles fully support the Bryson family, making her influence grow stronger daily. Consequently, the third prince, Callian, became completely worthless, ignored even by standard knights. The Viscount, entering directly beside the queen, quietly briefs her on how they will handle Pable, and she agrees, noting they will offer him sufficient compensation. Sitting down at the table, the queen tells the Viscount never to bring up such trivial matters in her presence again, and he quickly replies that he understands. Glancing toward Baron, the queen wonders why she must waste her precious time on such worthless pests. Baron silently stares back at her with an icy, deadly glare. Everyone else at the table stays completely silent, watching. Then the queen calls out to the third prince, Callian, who slowly turns to face her. She notes with a cold smile that he has grown quite a bit lately. In response, Callian offers a soft smile, catching the queen completely off guard. Swirling his wine glass, he casually replies that he hasn't grown all that much yet. He ends with a sharp grin, declaring that he will definitely grow much more. Hearing his bold reply, the other two princes are left completely speechless. The queen glares back with a flash of anger. Then, the Viscount chimes in, enthusiastically declaring that no matter how much Callian has actually grown. While the Viscount speaks, Blanche shoots an angry sidelong glance over at Callian. The queen whispers to Blanche, asking why he had not told her anything. Confused, Blanche asks what she means. She explains it is about his stallion, the personal horse that flat out refused to obey any of his commands. At first, Blanche fails to understand, but as the realization hits him, he quickly averts his gaze, thoroughly embarrassed by the entire situation. The queen mutters that he should have told her sooner, but Blanche snaps back. He grips his fork in silent rage, while his mother continues to press him. She complains that he never mentioned the beast, did not respect his authority. He slams his fork onto the table, declaring the horse was always useless. Blanche abruptly stands up from his chair and announces his early departure. Startled by his sudden outburst, the queen desperately calls out his name. 3 weeks fly by, and the highly anticipated royal birthday finally arrives. Every single noble is working tirelessly to make sure the event is flawless. Caravans of horses arrive at the palace, heavily loaded with luxurious gifts. Everyone is eager for the grand banquet, wondering if the princes are ready. You can feel the thick tension building as the critical day approaches. Meanwhile, the royal tailor double-checks the measurements he took of the third prince, Callian, only to notice something strange. The numbers are completely different from before, making him scratch his head. But just as he prepares to ask Callian if he is eating well, a dark drop of blood suddenly splashes onto the pristine floor. The tailor looks up and gasps as he sees Callian bleeding heavily. Blood pours from the young prince's nose, sending shockwaves through the room. Panicked, the servants scramble forward to help their beloved master. His chief attendant, Yan, desperately calls for a clean cloth to stop it. Yet Callian just waves it off, claiming he is merely lacking sleep. Yan quickly snaps back, arguing that exhaustion is not the cause here. The tailor chimes in, warning that the nosebleed is only the beginning. He points out that Callian has also lost a staggering amount of weight. His entire frame has shrunk, which is incredibly worrying for his age. Callian knows this all too well. Still, he forces a gentle smile. To ease their growing anxiety, he jokes that he just exercised too much. But deep down, Callian realizes his stamina is getting progressively worse. Using mana triggers a sharp, agonizing pain throughout his entire body. He quietly suspects there might be a fatal flaw in his heart. Frowning, the tailor scolds him, insisting this is no laughing matter. Any medical checkups? None needed. Callian insisted he was completely fine. Still, Callian wondered why on earth he had to get a nosebleed in front of everyone. The tailor tried to argue. Callian, unmoved, he stood completely firm. He insisted he was fine, but Yan stepped in, saying he could not let this slide. The reason for the bleeding, simple. Callian just kept picking his nose. Yan even added that it must have been hard for the prince to admit that. Unbelievable. Hearing this ridiculous excuse, Callian was completely left speechless. He stared in shock while the surrounding vassals started whispering among themselves. Yan smoothly concluded that Callian was actually eating and exercising perfectly well. The tailor bought the story, since Yan obviously knew the prince's habits best. He nodded in agreement, while Yan turned to Prince Callian with a playful wink. Callian stood there completely lost. What was that wink even about? Then it clicked. He remembered the day Yan worried about him. He had revealed he could use magic. He explained his failing health was just a side effect of gathering mana. Even so, he couldn't believe Yan chose to ruin his royal reputation like this. Still, he felt relieved. His servant had saved him from embarrassment. Tension gone, the tailor promised to finish adjusting the clothes. He looked quite worried, though, since they were running very low on time. No rush, Yan reassured him the prince had other appointments. This delay would buy the tailor more than enough time to finish up. The tailor left relieved, while Yan turned and quietly called out to Callian. His voice trembling, Callian asked if the awaited day had finally arrived. He fell silent. Anxiety consumed him over what lay ahead. He absolutely needed to meet the mage Ellen, regardless of how bad things got. He knew once the news broke, it would spread through the palace like wildfire. No leaks allowed, he had to find him immediately. But when lunchtime finally arrived and they headed over to the dining hall, they were suddenly informed that lunch had been canceled due to an urgent matter. Instead, the meal was replaced by sudden, individual meetings with everyone. Callian froze. How could they meet everyone one-on-one? He wondered how there would even be time to meet everyone individually. Why not gather everyone? Regardless, he quietly followed the butler. As they approached the first chamber, a wave of nervousness washed over him. An unexpected twist. He never planned on a private meeting. Then the doors creaked open, and a voice announced the king was waiting. Stepping inside, Callian saw a man casually sitting on a sofa, reading a newspaper. It was none other than the king of Caris himself, Roman Leru Caris. The king completely ignored him, so Callian politely bowed in greeting. Straightening his back, the prince slowly looked up to make eye contact. He looked up. What he saw left him completely stunned. The king paid him absolutely no attention, eyes still glued to the paper. Callian lacked manners sometimes, but this was flat-out rude. Finally, without even looking up, the king curtly ordered him to sit down. He casually congratulated him on his 38th birthday and began questioning him. With his eyes still glued to the newspaper, the king casually noted that the prince seemed to be recovering well, a comment that shocked him. He thought back to his worried vassals, realizing even the castle staff knew. People had noticed his fast recovery. The prince finally understood why the king wanted to meet his sons individually despite having almost no time, if they met. All at once, the ruler would actually have to focus on their conversation. This way was much simpler. To the king, any family time was just a massive waste of precious time. Baron found this royal family highly bizarre. A father who completely ignored his kids, an indifferent eldest prince, and a wild second prince who possessed absolutely zero manners or sense of duty. He constantly reeked of cheap alcohol and treated his own servants like garbage. Right as those thoughts crossed Baron's mind, the dining room doors swung open. The king immediately frowned in annoyance, coldly pointing out that she was late. The queen had finally arrived. She just shrugged it off with a mocking grin. Watching her smirk, Baron realized she held more than enough power to ignore. The king's anger. Meanwhile, the prince forced a polite smile onto his face, silently realizing that there was an active assassin hiding in plain sight. When a noble loudly declared the banquet open, Baron scanned the crowd closely. He needed to figure out who sent the assassin. Suddenly, he stepped forward. Whispers instantly broke out, with guests noting how radically he had changed. Meanwhile, the second prince, Blanche, looked completely wasted. The king and queen watched the spectacle. The queen scoffed, murmuring that this meant nothing, people were just making useless noise, swirling his glass. The king disagreed, noting that something about the boy had genuinely changed. Just then, the third prince's arrival was announced as he stepped inside. Every single eye in the grand hall locked onto him in sheer shock. The crazy rumors were actually true, the stunned crowd realized in disbelief. He had the dark hair and crimson eyes of the legendary Suspanian. Talk about an absolute glow-up, his hiding bangs were completely gone. Pinning his cloak was a vibrant red brooch that matched his sharp eyes. This bold outfit was a clear declaration that he would hide no longer. Seeing their stunned reactions, a subtle smile crept onto the prince's face. His loyal servant Yan leaned in close, whispering about the intense staring. But before getting an answer, the servant smirked, claiming he already knew why. Prince Baron raised an eyebrow, waiting to hear his silly explanation. Smiling brightly, Yan teased if it was because of his striking good looks. He added that Seaton would be thrilled. Baron stared back, completely speechless. The prince explained that everyone was actually looking at these blinding jewels. Thinking of the tailor's exhausting work, Baron told Yan to just be grateful. If they had used every accessory, things would have been so much worse than this. Still, Yan insisted that his master looked absolutely magnificent, walking along. Baron casually asked if Yan's family still lived in the capital, Caris. Yan was deeply touched that the prince even remembered such a detail. He explained that his sister and father had actually gone back home. With only the rest of his family living in Caris, the prince then asked if they would ever visit the royal palace. Yan replied they would with an invitation. Hearing this, Baron stopped and stared, trying to change the subject. Yan quickly asked when they should head back to Raven in the garden. Baron realized his servant simply did not want to discuss his family. There must be secrets he prefers to keep, Baron thought, before answering Yan by stating they would wait for the right moment to make their move. Then the prince mentioned a certain person he wanted to see, surprising his servant. Baron casually asked Yan if he knew why this grand hall was named Siegfried. Of course he did, Yan replied, explaining it honored their legendary first patriarch. That was none other than the legendary war hero, Duke Quitro's Hans Siegfried. Despite holding immense power as the sole ducal house of Caris, they had remained loyal to the crown for 500 years, showing an unwavering devotion to defending the Sisvanian territory. Baron recalled being deeply impressed by that story back when he was Baron. Yan then asked if the person the prince wished to see was nearby, but before he finished, the answer presented itself as a booming laugh suddenly drew their attention. Someone remarked that Siegfried's Summer Night is a total classic. Classic? Yan then pointed directly toward the crowd, showing him Duke Slyman Hun. Siegfried, a highly distinguished man with a groomed beard and a captivating smile. Baron smiled, appreciating such incredibly loyal bloodlines. To test his reach, Prince Baron quietly began releasing his inner magic. Sizing up the Duke's instincts, Slyman immediately picked up the mysterious pulse. In the air, turning his gaze straight toward the third prince. Locking eyes with Baron, the Duke realized this raw power came from him. Baron stopped releasing his magic, feeling thoroughly satisfied. Slyman had pinpointed him in a heartbeat, despite the tiny trace of mana. Yan noticed this, whispering that the legendary Duke seemed quite interested. Baron knew that as one of the 5 master swordsmen on the continent, there was simply no way Slyman would miss a surge like that. He told Yan to pretend they had not noticed the Duke's intense stare, calmly turning around to slip away from his line of sight. Slyman watched them go, intrigued by the incredible potential hidden in the youth. Moments later, the king raised a glass, thanking everyone for their warm wishes, and welcoming them to celebrate the night in the name of Caris. Slip-away time, Baron and Yan quietly escaped out a window using their ropes. Entering the garden, they found a notoriously disobedient horse waiting. Yet under Baron's commanding gaze, it remained perfectly calm. It was remarkably gentle, earning a soft pat of approval from the prince. Yan warned him not to be fooled, but watching the stallion's behavior, he finally admitted the creature was actually quite highly intelligent. The servant asked if they should make for the main gate now. Prince Baron agreed, knowing entry was impossible without an invite. Approaching the gates, they spotted a tense standoff between guards and a weary traveler. He claimed to have journeyed far, but the guard coldly refused him entry. The guard explained he could not enter, gently asking him to leave while Callian watched from afar. The young prince was completely taken aback when he finally recognized the mysterious visitor. The newcomer calmly asked the guard if he was being turned away simply for lacking an invitation. It was Elon Manassel, leaving every single guard completely frozen in utter disbelief. Fear immediately gripped the soldiers as they began whispering nervously to one another. Yet one stubborn guard gathered his courage and insisted that rules were still rules. Even an archmage needed an invitation to enter, prompting Elon to smile beneath his hood. Peering at the guard, Elon chuckled softly and called it a real shame. He wondered if Kairos judged its guests by appearance, leaving Callian deep in thought. Listening from a distance, Callian was genuinely surprised by the mage's bold words. Callian silently agreed that judging anyone by their clothes was a massive mistake. And yet he could tell the archmage was not just complaining to cause trouble. It looked like Elon was actively searching for any excuse to avoid entering the kingdom. With that, Elon turned his horse around and declared he would head back immediately. Watching him leave, Callian knew he simply could not miss this perfect chance. Sensing his intentions, his servant immediately reminded him of the strict royal decree. No one was permitted to leave the castle grounds during the grand festival. But Callian knew that if they hesitated any longer, the mage would disappear forever. Callian ordered Yan to hold off the guards by any means necessary. Then the prince spurred his horse forward and dashed straight toward the exit. Ignoring his frantic servant shouting after him, Callian only urged his mount to go faster. The gatekeepers cried out in panic, ordering the prince to halt his horse immediately. They yelled that leaving the kingdom was strictly forbidden by the king. But with incredible grace, Callian's horse leaped clean over the startled guards. The horse raced toward freedom, leaving the guards completely dumbfounded by the daring escape. Screaming at the top of their lungs, they sounded the alarm that the prince had fled. They scrambled frantically to mount their own horses and give chase immediately. Watching the chaos unfold, Yan stood frozen, unsure of how to handle the situation. Then he remembered Callian's desperate command to stop the pursuing guards. Yan steeled his resolve, ready to do the impossible to buy some time. He was Prince Callian's personal attendant, and his duty was to protect him. With sudden, immense bravery, he shouted for the departing soldiers to halt immediately. He boldly declared that Duke Siegfried himself had authorized the prince's sudden departure. The guards sneered back, demanding to know who dared throw around the duke's name. In response, he untied his hair, revealing himself to be Sir Oyen Siegfried. With his hair flowing in the wind, he proudly declared himself the duke's eldest son. Later that day, loud, hearty laughter echoed throughout the duke's private chamber. Yan sat there, thoroughly embarrassed, while his companion laughed without showing any restraint. The young noble sighed, grumbling that this was really nothing to brag about. He raised his voice, desperately trying to get his amused father to stop. But the duke only chuckled harder, admitting he could barely believe the clever stunt. He teased his son playfully, just like any father would tease their own child. The duke remarked that his son had simply gone out to protect the young prince. While his father praised the quick decision, Yan quickly shook his head in disagreement. He argued that the prince's reckless stunt would completely ruin their relationship. And the king, Yan's father, the duke, declared he absolutely would not ask about what happened. Yan was completely shocked by his father's calm demeanor. He firmly repeated he would ask absolutely nothing about the incident. Siegfried pondered the implications. If the prince receives help from their family, he will grow cautious about their support, if there is a connection where he gets saved without any real payback. It means acknowledging a friendly alliance between their family and the prince. Brisson will certainly criticize this. Everything will likely be buried as if nothing happened, the duke concluded. Prince Baron was still pursuing Mage Elon, closing in fast near a grand fountain. Elon noticed him, but he did not look like a critical prince. Did Baron really come to scold him for not having an invitation? The master mage asked why the prince was following him, quite strange. Baron recalled a rumor: 7th Circle mages actually reversed their aging process. It seemed entirely true. Prince Baron then quickly spoke up. He noted the late hour, asking if Elon would simply return. Elon replied that when he tried opening a closed door, the threshold felt far too high. Baron did not fully grasp his cryptic meaning. Wondering if it was a deep hint, he only knew he could do nothing. To help the mage, Baron noted Elon chose a closed door while another was standing wide open. He asked where the wizard kept his invitation. Standing face to face, Baron admitted that he himself was the one blocking the wind, forgetting to clean the dirt from the door's threshold. He never expected the guard's mistake. The mage was utterly astonished by his words, wondering if the prince was truly honest or merely brazen. Elon offered a small, knowing smile, finding the prince to be quite amusing. Looking at him, Elon recalled their first meeting, when the prince's sharp gaze did not resemble a typical 14-year-old boy at all. Next, he noticed the prince's hand, something entirely different caught his eye. Just watch. Elon called out to the prince, who quietly waited for him to speak. With a swift apology, the old mage reached forward and grabbed Baron's hand, pulling it close. Baron, completely confused by this, demanded to know his intentions, but the ancient wizard was already starting to use his magic, seeking to spark Baron's latent energy. Instantly, a familiar, agonizing pain flared up right in his chest. The exact torture he felt whenever his own power activated. Elon's mana surged inside, but the prince's energy repelled it with violent force, triggering a miniature blast that forced them apart. The horses, startled by the noise, recoiled as Baron clutched his aching chest. Elon softly whispered that even with doors closed, the wind cannot be completely blocked. Baron understood that the wizard had already discovered his secret physical condition. Repeating the cryptic words, he wondered how the wind could not be blocked. Baron admitted that the mage was correct to some degree, since he was unable to control mana, but Elon suspected the real issue was not magic at all, wondering if the young prince truly did not know the cause. Watching Baron's tense fist, the mage quietly weighed the young man's actual limits. If he cannot see where the true threat lies, then he is completely lost. Ellen stared back firmly. The Dragonblood Kyries despised mages. Despite their legendary dragon blood, they looked down on magic, yet Ellen came here. He originally wanted to trick them, but things changed. Now he was following this strange young prince into the absolute unknown. Ellen demanded to know why the prince wanted this meeting. Baron stood breathless. Still struggling to breathe, the desperate young prince prepared his reply. He knew the legendary mage would spot a lie instantly. Sincerity was his only play. Dismounting from his horse, Baron slowly stepped closer to the mage. He asked for his name, then calmly confessed that his life was in grave danger. Ellen watched him closely. He was well aware of the young royal's grim reality. He was despised by absolutely everyone, a prince surrounded by bitter enemies. He had no real allies left. Suddenly, a magical barrier snapped into place. The speed of the spell stunned Baron, while Ellen quickly dismounted. Leaping gracefully from his horse, the mage had cast it without a single sound. It was a silent spell cast, without uttering a single word. Ellen cut straight to the point, demanding to know the boy's ultimate goal. Did he just want to delay tragedy, or end it entirely? Was he ready to strike at the actual root of this endless conspiracy? For now, Baron admitted, he just wanted to survive the immediate threat. But eventually, he wanted the entire threat wiped out. If claiming the crown was the only way to do it, then so be it. He would seize the throne itself, if that is what it took to win the war. Ellen chuckled. To this dying prince, the ultimate crown was just a tool. Talk about a high-stakes gamble. This dying prince desperately needed a miracle. This boy who resembled Sisvanian needed the mage to survive the coming storm. Things were getting interesting, and the mage was completely hooked. He asked the young prince to show him what he could possibly offer in return. Without a single moment of hesitation, the prince knelt. He proudly announced his true royal name, Callian Reincarnis, to his mentor. The great Ellen Manhwa accepted His Highness's invitation on the spot. Right then and there, the great mage resolved to keep this prince alive. Elsewhere, young Yan was quietly talking to his father in secret. He asked if they were absolutely sure his true identity remained completely hidden. The Duke assured him that everything was handled and not to worry. Yan muttered that if anyone found out, he would have fled long ago. Suddenly, a sharp memory flashed through the boy's mind. Looking visibly tense, he suddenly asked how Leah was doing these days. The sudden question made the Duke freeze instantly. He slowly replied that Leah was thriving as the new family head. She gladly took over the leadership role that Yan had casually cast aside. Stretching lazily, the Duke stood up and welcomed him home anytime. With a heavy sigh, he admitted he did not expect to see him again soon. Yan kept his head down, muttering that they would surely meet again in 3 years. Surprised by his son's words, Duke Siegfried questioned if Yan truly intended to abandon his position as the prince's servant. Yan just remained thoughtful, bowing his head. He replied that he would soon turn 15. His father was stunned. The Duke merely watched him in silence. Then the Duke called his son. Yan looked up attentively. He asked if Yan knew the Siegfried family nickname. Yan confirmed. Before he could even finish, his father smiled. He was correct. The Duke smiled. We are the elephants of Caris. For a long time, they never fought for the throne, yet they always held immense power. Untouchable beasts, the king of all animals, sovereign and feared. The explanation ended. Looking thoughtful, Yan asked why this was brought up. But his father suddenly cut him off. A tight embrace followed. He hugged him, saying their family name carried incredible weight. Still embracing him, the Duke told Yan to do whatever he wished. Yan held his father's arm, overflowing with happiness at those sweet words. Then his father lightly squeezed his neck, a playful tease. He called him a rascal. Yan squealed, asking him to stop. It was hurting, yet the two laughed together under the night sky. Yan composed himself. Ready to serve again, he addressed his father formally. The Duke questioned the sudden distance. He told his son to scram. Yan bowed respectfully, promising to see his father next time. The Duke watched him leave. Sitting alone on the bench, he smiled. That senseless tantrum only proved one thing. Yan was a Siegfried. There was no denying it. He was a Siegfried. Then the Duke recalled the banquet. The prince had exuded powerful magic. When had he grown so strong, staring at the night sky? Under a beautiful full moon, the Duke wondered what Callian planned next. The morning arrived with a brilliant blue sky, and a grand carriage slowly approached. As it entered, the onlookers could hardly believe their eyes. They whispered in disbelief. Was that crest really what they thought? It displayed 7 red flowers and a silver cane. A noble lady whispered that Alan Manisel's contract with Rubrin was over. Her companion gasped. Asking how Alan ended up in Caris, she replied it was obvious. After experiencing such a tragedy, he had to leave, but the king must have kept him here. Still, she mentioned another wild rumor. The man questioned if it was really true about Alan Manisel's son. Just then a figure stepped down from the carriage. It was Alan Manisel, dressed in sharp black and white. His hair was loose. He smiled. Surely his new disciple had prepared a nice welcome. He recalled the young prince's request to arrive at a specific time, with strict orders to be there exactly at 9:30, passing through the open door right on time. Was Callian competing with the Brysons? If so, that complex political struggle would not be easy at all. Meanwhile, Baron Palun eagerly awaited the perfect moment to introduce the mage. He wanted to shake up the political game. Suddenly, a man approached. Elon makes a sudden visit, greeted by vassals who say the king is waiting. His Highness is currently having tea with an attendant, expecting the mage's arrival. Once they meet, the king immediately questions him while they share some tea. The king gets straight to the point, since the legendary mage requested a place. He asks one more time to confirm if Elon truly wants to stay. With absolute calm, the mage replies that he absolutely does need a place. This sudden request leaves the king deep in thought, plotting his next move. To stand against his rival Alech, he absolutely needs a force like Elon. Yet he never expected this legendary figure to just offer his services first. Naturally, the king tries to figure out what Elon is actually plotting here. Sipping his tea, Elon casually mentions seeing something strange in the square last night. He ran into a strange black cat with glowing red eyes, leaving the king quite puzzled. Elon explains that the creature was incredibly smart, so he wanted to teach it. But the poor animal had nowhere to go, which immediately catches the king off guard. Curiously, the king asks what exactly he intends to teach a stray cat. Elon smiles and says magic, of course, but that is not even the half of it. He also wants to build a comfortable environment that his new pet will enjoy. To make that happen, he needs to help the homeowner and properly arrange things. The king is completely stunned. It feels like this mage already knows everything. He asks Elon directly if he is truly capable of managing all of this. Elon knew that taking Prince Callian as his disciple would shield him from Bryson. No one could interfere, allowing him to protect and assist the young prince. So he tells the king that all of this is actually Callian's clever invitation. Now watch this reaction. The king slaps his thigh and stands up quickly. He agrees to provide a room, while Elon watches with a quiet smile. It is not like things can get any worse. Then, the king brings up another point. He admits he is highly curious about one thing, having heard the boy is nothing special. Not special, Elon repeats. Honestly, even Callian's poor health is uniquely weird. In fact, it is hard to find anything remotely normal about the kid. The king goes on, pointing out the rumors about the young prince's weakness. He mentions how Callian is supposedly terrified of simple things like horses, yet Elon insists. It actually surprises the mage that a father only relies on cheap gossip. The ruler insists that if his son were truly gifted, he surely would have known. Elon quickly cuts him off with a very direct question of his own. He asks if the king genuinely has no clue about his son's state. Then he flatly asks if the king even cares about his own bloodline. The king glares back with intense gravity, but Elon already has his answer. He knows absolutely nothing. Elon calmly states that sometimes attention can be poison. Indifference is a remedy, but being busy is just a cheap excuse. The legendary mage concludes his thoughts, leaving the monarch utterly speechless. Shocked by such bold insolence, the king tries to maintain his royal composure. He claims he will overlook this rude behavior, attributing it to a teacher's concern. Turning toward the exit, the king scoffs at having to explain himself at all. But he insists that his children are incredibly important to him, especially Callian. He delivers his parting words, with his hand resting firmly on the doorknob. The king tries to cut the conversation short, but before he can even finish, Elon snaps his fingers. Suddenly, a soundproof barrier locks around them. The startled king freezes. Elon looks him dead in the eye, telling him to quit stalling. Terrified, the king demands to know how Elon dare use magic inside the palace. Instead, Elon starts laying out the truth about Callian. His lips are bone dry, his breathing shallow, skin pale blue, and fingernails purplish. His clothes are thrown together in a desperate hurry. They were made a month ago, meaning Callian has lost massive weight. He cannot even hold his own weight up. Standing is completely out of the question. Eyes closed, dizziness washes over him. The king shudders at Elon's terrifying details. Elon warns him that playing the passive spectator will cost him everything. Meanwhile, a maid slowly approaches Yan, standing by the prince's room door. She mentions it is nearly lunchtime, and the prince still has not had his morning tea. Yan quickly takes the tray, promising to keep a close eye on him. Entering the quiet room, he finds the prince still fast asleep. The prince looks completely exhausted, his face worryingly thin and pale. Yan realizes the toll yesterday must have taken on his fragile master. Just as he leans in to wake him, Elon materializes right behind him. Elon casually asks if the prince is still sleeping, catching Yan off guard. For a split second, Yan cannot even begin to process what just happened. Then he panics, sending the tea tray flying and yelling at the mage. He demands to know how Elon can just sneak in like a total ghost. Elon calmly notes that outsiders are not allowed inside without permission. So you teleported in simply because you did not have permission, Yan asks. The mage corrects him. It was actually a rift, which requires extreme skill. Yan quickly pulls himself together and tells Elon to leave the room immediately. Before Yan can even finish his warning, Elon steps uncomfortably close to him. He asks if Yan really does not recognize him from Rebrin all those years ago. Did you think a little growth would hide who you are? Elon asks. Hearing the old nickname Baby Elephant leaves, Yan utterly frozen. His father had sworn that absolutely no one would suspect his real identity. Yet here he is, exposed in a heartbeat, and far too quickly. Suddenly, Prince Baron stirs and wakes up, breaking the tense silence. He asks how long he was out, but Yan quickly points out. They have a visitor. Getting up, Prince Baron looks over and spots Elon. He greets him as teacher. Elon immediately hands him a small red pouch. Curious about the gift, Prince Baron unties the cord to peek inside. He shakes out a few small pellets into his palm, asking what they are. Elon tells him to take one every single day without fail. Is this medicine? Baron asks. Elon explains he has two major issues. First, his mana control is failing. Second, his body is wasting away. Prince Baron is amazed at how easily the mage figured everything out. Elon saw the truth without a single word being spoken. Elon then asks if the prince truly possesses the blessing power. The prince nods, explaining it grants healing and an incredible affinity. Baron realized his situation. Even that legendary healing power seemed to have vanished. Recalling a past hand injury, he asked Elan if his heart was the problem. Elan grew serious, asking the prince if he ever found this combination strange. A heavy silence fell. Baron quietly admitted his doubts. He wondered if the blessing was actually keeping his heart strong. Since the heart is the true core of mana and life, Elan confirmed. He agreed that the legendary blessing was indeed focusing there. But Elan had an incredibly serious look as he made a revelation. Baron's blessing had not vanished, nor was his mana actually blocked. Confused, the prince demanded answers. Elan threw back a massive question. What if the legendary blessing of Sisfanian was actually still working? But it was being pushed to the absolute limit somewhere else, Elan asked. The young prince froze. Could his power really be struggling that hard? It was so overwhelmed it could not even patch up a tiny scratch. Terrified, Baron asked the wizard if there was some deadly poison inside him. Without that blessing, Elan said, you would already be a corpse. A cold dread washed over Baron as the wizard explained the truth. Fighting off that lethal poison was keeping his recovery power maxed out. On top of that, Baron had tried to force his mana to move. His weakened heart simply shut it down. Baron fell into deep thought. Callian was marked for death from the very beginning. The slow-acting poison was in his system way before Baron took over. This assassination plot had been running for a very long time. Angered, he wondered why they still executed a kid who was already dying. Lon could practically feel the dark fury radiating off the young prince. That was not the kind of bloodlust a 14-year-old kid should have. Who is this boy really? Elan wondered before Baron broke the silence. Pointing to the small bag, he realized those pills were the antidote. Elan nodded. It was a rushed job, but it would definitely get the job done. Staring at the medicine, Baron looked up at Elan with a strange, daring question. What if I keep taking the poison and this antidote at the same time? Talk about a crazy plan. Elan stared in absolute disbelief at him. Taking the cure while swallowing more poison would only buy him some time. The effects would just slow down, but Baron said that was plenty. Stunned, Elan asked if he seriously meant to do this crazy stunt. Did he know the culprit? Baron nodded. He suspected the morning tea. It was the only thing he drank daily. Drinking it in front of everyone left him completely isolated. Maybe the original Callian noticed the threat and started rejecting the drinks. And that sudden refusal is what got him killed in the end. But now that the soul had swapped, the killers might change tactics. There was no telling how they would strike next, he told Elan. No one could know, not yet. The wizard wondered if that was his only motive. Baron shook his head. If he exposed the morning tea, Yan and the loyal vassals would panic. Would be at risk, which was unacceptable. The prince knew the culprit had kept a predictable schedule, confident they would never be caught. Sighing, Ellen promised that the baby elephant would be fine. Baron did not understand the joke. The wizard simply told him to ignore it, regardless. The mage confirmed he understood Baron's predicament before asking him what his next move would be. Instantly, Baron recalled a man who once called him a fool, advising that to win an opponent's trump card you first offer something in return. At that moment, his thoughts drifted back. I remember you, father, he thought. Baron then asked Ellen to escort him out of the palace tomorrow morning. Soon, shouting echoed as someone called for Prince Planche, demanding he wake up. The doors burst wide open. A frantic guest rushed inside. The servants, who were still trying to wake the prince, were immediately dismissed with a harsh wave. She pulled back the bed curtains with a sudden, sharp yank. It was the queen, noting it was getting incredibly late to prepare his afternoon engagements. Planche sat on the edge of the bed, shirtless and with a tired face. Suddenly, the queen gasped, a strong smell of alcohol in the air. She asked why he could not compose himself, especially after being banned from drinking before the ceremony. Calmly, Planche reached for a glass of water on his bedside table and asked what she wanted. He demanded she answer and leave, which irritated the queen to the point of biting her lip. She revealed that Callian had apparently chosen a mentor. It was the legendary mage Ellen Manasel. As Planche finished his drink, she added that the nobles were already wavering, showing no interest. The second prince asked what that had to do with his own plans. The queen suddenly stepped closer with a furious glare, telling him not to waste all the resources spent on him. She ordered him to get ready immediately, warning that many eyes would watch him today. She demanded he not disappoint her before finally exiting, leaving The prince's room, Planche, was seething. In his absolute fury, he hurled the glass onto the floor, shattering it. His startled servants noticed that he was bleeding. As blood dripped onto the floor, Planche ordered them to leave. Screaming in sheer anger, he ordered everyone to withdraw immediately. In his mind, Callian's smiling face with those red eyes flashed, making him seethe. The royal family soon began their grand parade through the cheering kingdom. The king waved back in gratitude as the massive crowd applauded him. From inside the carriage, the queen silently observed the excited crowd. Riding close behind were the three princes, looking incredibly elegant. A young child, sitting on his father's shoulders, cheered excitedly. The father smiled, noting that the prince riding furthest in the back was the most anticipated. It was Callian, dressed in brilliant red that highlighted his crimson eyes. Callian's loyal servant, leading his horse, quietly called out to him. Looking rather worried, the servant asked how the prince was feeling today. He smiled, relieved that the prince looked much better than yesterday. Smiling warmly, the prince replied that his improved health was because Callian had rested well, likely because the antidote he took the day before was finally working. The constant, exhausting pain in his chest had finally faded away. His servant arrived next, listing a packed schedule with a grand parade and horseback riding. Tonight even featured a grand ball, but Callian dismissed his worries. Callian insisted he was feeling much better and could easily handle all the upcoming engagements. Meanwhile, a mysterious cloaked figure was hiding deep within the bustling crowd outside. He stayed tucked away in a dark alley, yet the young prince quickly noticed him. Something about the figure seemed familiar, yet Callian knew he had never met these people. Suddenly, memories of the brutal war that took his past life came rushing back. He remembered the brave warrior who had saved him and realized it was this exact man. The prince froze in absolute disbelief, staring intently at the dark alleyway. Could that really be Kyrie? Yes, he was absolutely certain of it. Even his loyal horse, Baron, sensed Kyrie's presence there. Callian wondered what his former savior was doing in the city of Caris. Baron tried to head straight toward the alley, but the servant quickly grabbed his reins. Despite the shock, Callian calmly ordered them to keep moving forward. As the figures quietly slipped away, the servant wondered if something was wrong. The loyal horse simply stood there, quietly watching as the mysterious figures walked away. Callian gently patted Baron, smiling as he whispered that he felt it too. But they could not go after them now, as the figures vanished from sight. The encounter immediately pulled Callian back to the dark and painful memory of his final day. Kyrie had smiled right before sacrificing himself to save Callian's life. Soon the royal family paraded down the red carpet, where a man stepped forward to greet them. It was Melchior Palun, the wealthy merchant hosting today's spectacular royal horse show. He had taken over the event from the Ramin family, which Callian initially ignored. And trust me, this was the exact event that dragged him into a pointless war of nerves. In his past life, Prince Randall was severely injured during this show. And Palun was actually hanged that very same day. Now Palun was smiling warmly as he guided the royal family directly toward their seats. The young prince carefully scanned their immediate surroundings. His eyes instantly locked onto the massive chandelier hanging above. That was the exact chandelier destined to crash down and severely injure his royal brother. It was ridiculous that the elite royal guards had completely failed to inspect something so massive. Speaking of security, he recalled that annoying knight commander. Wearing a subtle smile, Callian quietly began to plan his next move. Honestly, you have to wonder if a greedy merchant like Palun even deserves a second chance. The prince knew a greedy merchant like Palun would do absolutely anything to win over the king. While his servant offered to help, Callian already had a clever plan in mind. He openly declared that he felt highly uncomfortable sitting directly under those chandeliers. He walked away after demanding that the flustered merchant immediately inspect the massive light fixtures. Palun stood there in utter confusion, staring up at the ceiling. Soon the grand show began, as riders performed incredible horse acrobatics. Standing aside with clasped hands, someone watched the exciting performance with deep apprehension. Palun was absolutely thrilled to be near the king, dreaming of his own future glory. He had prepared extensively and could not let this perfect opportunity slip away. Something behind him suddenly caught his attention. It was Prince Callian, looking entirely bored with the ongoing presentation. Palun remembered the young prince's request and went to check the ropes, holding them. Palun was instantly startled. the rope in his hands was indeed incredibly frayed. Near the point of snapping, what if the prince had not warned him? The outcome of such an accident would have easily sealed Pollen's fate. Watching the young royalty, Pollen wondered, how could he have known about that damaged rope beforehand? Pollen concluded the prince was incredibly clever and assessed situations perfectly, but he still had one major question. What made the Duke such a terrible enemy to the crown? Just then Pollen noticed the second prince. He froze in shock as Blanche kept his intense gaze locked on him. He barely even blinked. Then Blanche told Pollen to know his place, called him an insect. Unfazed, the energetic presenter on stage continued the grand show. But upstairs in the royal balcony, things were about to get ugly. Blanche openly declared that the stench of his brother's blood disgusted him. Everyone nearby heard his words and felt a sudden, deep chill. It even drew the attention of the king, who usually ignored everything. The young Prince Callian seemed deeply shaken by the brutal insult. But deep down he hid a wicked smile. He was absolutely thrilled. Blanche had spoken at the worst possible time. It was perfect. The king simply turned away, leaving Celeste to handle the mess alone. Behind her fan, Celeste was completely on edge, fuming with rage. She had explicitly warned Blanche before, yet he ignored her completely. She glared at him with pure hatred, but the prince remained completely calm. This terrified the queen. Did he do this on purpose? Of all times, why did he have to ruin things today? She wondered. Rumors quickly spread about the unacceptable words Blanche said to the king. Now the nobles could no longer openly throw their support behind him, especially with Callian winning the absolute loyalty of the entire Mage Tower. If Callian became the next heir, their entire future would be ruined. They could not stand idly by. The choice had to be made. Fortunately, the main event concluded without any further major incident. Randall managed to avert disaster, and the king spared Blanche from punishment. Callian smiled. Things were definitely working out in his favor now. Yet Celeste remained surprisingly calm despite her grand scheme being ruined. Watching her closely, Callian wondered, was she the true mastermind here? Suddenly, memories of his past life as Byrne flooded his mind. His brother had asked what he thought of the exact accident. Byrne replied that it was meant to assassinate one of them. What other motive could there be? His brother offered no reply. Instead, he just called Byrne over to place a simple bet. Byrne grumbled, having already lost so much money to his brother. As they played chess, his brother dropped a very subtle hint. Did he not think the accident was too perfectly staged? Their family was the target. The Melfier Guild was the second largest here. For Renan Ramin, the kingdom's top merchant guild leader, removing his main rivals was an incredible opportunity. Prince Callian asked his servant about the Pollen Guild's primary business. Ian quickly replied that they made everything from rich diamond mines. That was his ultimate answer, with Pollen finally out of the way. The Ramin family would easily step in to seize the diamond market. The prince originally planned to retreat after saving the baron's life. But now he would make Pollen pay for causing all this trouble. Meanwhile, Pollen was trembling in absolute terror. He ordered his servant to clear his entire schedule today, which left the man utterly baffled since the baron could never miss the upcoming royal ball. Pollen feigned absolute outrage over Blanche's sheer audacity just to get his way, using it as an excuse to skip the entire event. Meanwhile, vassals were frantically cleaning up the grand palace halls to prepare for the continuing festivities. Alone in his chambers, the king looked deeply troubled. He sat there brooding over everything. Then, the mage's warning returned to him. If he kept going down this path, Callian would only be the beginning. Blanche's cruel insults echoed next, calling Callian's mother's blood filthy. A flood of painful, heavy memories suddenly rushed back to him. Now he envisioned a red-haired woman softly calling out his name. It was Callian's mother, the king's former wife, lying on her deathbed. Suddenly, a vassal rushed into his chambers, breaking his trance. The servant announced that the queen demanded an immediate audience. Without waiting, she swept into the room, walking directly toward him. A maid clearing a cup offered to prepare tea for her. The queen demanded to know if the king was hosting uninvited guests. The king simply raised a hand, dismissing both the servant and the tea. He added that she would not be staying long, which visibly irritated her. King Ramin then asked why Celis had decided to pay him a visit. As she sat down, Celis declared that House Ramin would take responsibility For the entire incident, it was stunning to see her humble herself. Just to protect her son's fragile reputation, the king rubbed his chin, thinking deeply, asking if she still possessed her usual insolence. Celis ignored the jab, commenting instead on the day's impressive parade. She casually asked if Baron Pollen deserved a reward for the delightful event. The king remarked that she seemed to have put a lot of thought into this. Celis opened her fan, hiding her face, and offered a deal. She would hand over House Ramen's exclusive supply rights for the royal stables. She finished with a sharp smile. The king was genuinely stunned. Would she really surrender such a highly lucrative, massive investment? Then he recalled his chat with Manhwa, who predicted she would offer a concession. She had to give up something valuable to minimize the political damage. But she was not desperate enough to withdraw her knights from the palace. Instead, she would try to placate him with an incredibly tempting bribe. Once she agreed, it was a fair reward, showing her the king would turn a blind eye. That was the mage's final conclusion. Shortly after, the king made his decision. He crossed his legs, looking much calmer, and announced that he and Blanche would enter together. They would walk into the ballroom tonight, leaving the queen completely stunned by the news. Yet she was secretly thrilled, smiling as she promised the king would be highly pleased. With the agreement sealed, King Roman and Prince Blanche finally walked into the ballroom side by side. Right after, Baron Pollen secured his deal as the exclusive supplier for the royal stables. Everyone knew this was Queen Celis's desperate maneuver to protect her son's reputation, making sure the proud house of Roman never suffered such a blow. Clearly, the queen was paying dearly for Blanche's massive blunder, meaning that Callian had finally become a major threat, forcing the queen into taking direct action. Back in his chambers, Callian and his servant Ian were quite amused by the massive pile of gifts, with Callian noting that people definitely did not hesitate to switch sides, as Ian wondered what to do with them. The prince was just happy seeing Blanche and the Romans lose their power. Callian explained that he wanted to keep his circle free of traitors, so he ordered Ian to send back every single gift except for those from the arcane enclave in Pollen. Walking toward the door, he made sure they kept a detailed list of all the senders, but as he left, Callian spotted a peculiar package. Inside was an incredibly massive, stunningly beautiful necklace made entirely of deep red gems, shocking everyone in the room. The prince stared at it, utterly bewildered, and asked if this was actually a fancy horse collar. He found it highly specific and questioned his attendant. Ian admitted he only told the sender that the prince adored his horse. Raven, it was a bizarre present. Callian wondered why they bought jewels for a horse but nothing for its owner, instantly realizing this was a subtle test. Accepting it meant letting them easily settle their massive debt of life, after which they would send a second gift to declare the favor completely paid off. But the clever prince smirked, knowing he would not let them off so easily. A simple gemstone would never satisfy him. He ordered Ian to calculate the cost of the necklace and send that exact sum straight to Pollen. Ian asked if they were purchasing it, but the prince clarified that was not the case. Since it was priceless, they were paying for it, pointing at a bizarre plant. Callian joked that the prize for creativity went to this specimen. Ian went to inspect its sender, discovering it came from the arcane enclave, much to Callian's surprise. He joked about the sorcerer's weird taste while picking up a parchment, as Ian explained that the rare plant came with specific instructions. It was a magical flower that scattered glowing pollen after withering. This made it highly popular among herbalists. At first, the prince did not quite understand the meaning behind it, but then a sudden thought struck him, and he smiled, completely catching on. Ian then asked if he should return it to the enclave, but the prince decided they would keep it. As the maid quietly cleaned his chambers, a brilliant scheme crossed his mind. Suddenly, a sharp yell from Ian startled the maid as he stumbled nearby. The worried servant quickly asked if everything was all right, and the prince assured him. It looked like a simple slip of his hand. The teacup shattered, spilling. Every drop of hot liquid splashed onto the floor. Ian quickly ordered a maid to clean it up. While she wiped down the prince's clothes, Callian spotted exactly where the tea had splattered. It had splashed onto the flower, leaving the delicate petals dripping with the dark brew. As the maid scrubbed, Ian nervously asked if the hot liquid would kill the plant. But the prince declared loudly that it was perfectly fine because the tea was not poisoned. His blunt words terrified the maid. Still, he told them to leave the flower pot right there. He claimed to have grown fond of it. Soon after, two riders galloped along a dusty path. One of them expressed his gratitude, thanking the other for taking time out of his busy day. They were the prince and the mage. The sorcerer claimed he could never refuse such a summons. Not when his young apprentice was out here, constantly risking his own life in the open. Manisal observed that the prince looked far happier out here than inside the stifling palace walls. Callian agreed. He almost blurted out that it was his first time, but quickly corrected himself. He claimed he was merely seeking amusement, constantly reminding himself he was Callian now, not Baron. Then he asked the mage if the king had actually approved this sudden little excursion. The mage joked that the king was likely receiving that very request right now. The prince, still carrying Baron's memories, was not shocked by this bold attitude. Callian admitted he felt just as guilty as the mage, thinking back to his own escape. He had slipped right past Ian to meet Manasel, who warmly called the prince his true apprentice. The prince smiled, gladly accepting that title as a massive compliment. Then the mage grew serious, asking if he was taking the antidote regularly. The prince matched his grave look and confirmed that yes, he absolutely was. In fact, he had taken his dose that morning and felt exceptionally healthy. He was feeling so good, and his poisoner was already starting to panic, satisfying payback. Everything would fall right into place once the enemy walked into their trap, Callian concluded. The mage praised his clever planning, wondering if the boy even needed him. Callian shook his head. That was not true at all, he insisted. With a warm smile, he noted that none of this would work without the mage's gift. That unique present made everything possible. Soon, they reached a fork in the road. Pulling back on the reins, they halted. Manasel turned his horse around. Facing away from the prince, the mage announced this was as far as he would go. He would leave him here. Part of him wanted to accompany his young apprentice. Yet he decided to trust the boy. Callian pulled his hood over his face. He murmured that he knew the wise old sorcerer would understand his reasons. Manasel told him to find the magic shop on Taininch's street when his work was done. They would meet up there, spurring his mount forward. The prince nodded in agreement. He promised to be there, wishing them both the best of luck on their separate paths. They galloped away in opposite directions. Elsewhere, a muscular blacksmith pounded red-hot steel. Later, the prince held the finished blade, raising it so the steel reflected his crimson eye. Riding away from the forge, he quietly resolved that this simple weapon would do for now. He sheathed the cheap weapon, knowing it would suffice until his real, custom-ordered sword was finally ready. Standing in a dark alleyway nearby, he realized his next step required solid information. Zakrisha kept a massive spy network active all across the continent. They gathered secrets from every rival nation, however these continent to gather intelligence on other nations, but these spies did more than gather intel. Each agent spent years undergoing grueling training to become elite, cold-blooded killers, and the masterminds who built this secret network were none other than King Debhan, who was actually Baron's father. In the prince's past life, he pulled a hood low to hide his face and slipped down a dark alley, quickly spotting two seemingly drunk men. He was already approaching the hidden Pigeon Post Center on Narosha Street. Baron knew exactly how lethal these killers were, since he had personally trained them. As the drunken men stumbled past him, the prince simply adjusted his hood to stay hidden. After all, as a royal prince of Caris, if any assassin recognized him, they would likely kidnap him or do something far, far worse. His striking black hair and crimson eyes were simply too easy to spot. Baron knew he had to tread carefully. He quietly stepped inside the Pigeon Post Center. The place was massive, featuring 2 open floors packed with countless roosting birds. Baron realized the facility was far larger than he had ever expected. Suddenly, a young clerk approached and asked if he needed a carrier pigeon. The prince shook his head, noting that the birds still seemed fast asleep. This remark caught the clerk off guard, and he muttered they were sleepy birds. But the prince pushed further, pointing out they looked completely exhausted from a long journey. The employee nodded, confirming that was exactly why the birds were sleeping so heavily. As Baron spotted a bird, branded with a key-shaped mark on its back. He quietly remarked about its roost. Suspicious, the clerk asked what he wanted. Baron calmly replied that he was simply looking to buy some bird food. The man claimed he came to the right spot, but in a sudden flash of motion, the attendant lunged and slashed a piece clean off the young prince's hood. Pressing a cold blade against Baron's neck, the man claimed he hadn't sold any birds lately. Baron instantly knew this was no ordinary opponent. This body of Callian was simply not built for a brutal fight yet. Gently pushing the blade down with his bare hand, the prince calmly reasoned with him. Of course he hadn't sold him any pigeons, since Baron had just arrived there. The man stared back, his gaze cold and calculating. In this place, birds meant spies. And birdseed, that meant critical information. These secret agents kept their identities strictly hidden from their own allies to keep secrets safe if captured. The man demanded to know whose spy he was. The prince smirked with total confidence. He knew they had no way to verify his claim, even though he was using his late father's name, Nebulade, to pass as a secretion spy. Baron looked him in the eye and claimed he served under Nebulade. The clerk was completely stunned. This made Callian the first Saresian prince in history to actively spy on his own kingdom. Calmly, Baron added that since they were settled, he wanted some food, having just left the nest. Nodding, the agent immediately opened a hidden passage and gestured for him to follow. Leading the way down, the man noticed Baron carefully studying the dark tunnel walls. He remarked they would meet often, introducing himself as White Falcon. The prince offered his own code name in return. He could call him Red Swan. Falcon promised to remember it as they reached a room filled with books. Once inside, the spy turned to him and asked exactly what kind of feed he wanted. The prince wanted a specific item and some critical intel. The merchant simply named his price. He demanded 8 furons, paid up front. There were absolutely no exceptions. This caught the prince off guard. Baron wondered how the guy could charge without knowing the request. It felt like a cheap mind game, designed to completely throw him off. But the man anticipated his doubt, calmly stating they only did flat-rate fees here. He slid over the requested item, along with a folded note. Baron opened the paper, scanning the words and questioning if this was the spot. White Falcon nodded, confirming it was the only place that fit his demands. A quiet thank you slipped from the prince as he tucked the map away. But as Baron turned to leave, the merchant whispered a sudden warning to stay cautious. It was odd, this shady dealer did not seem like the caring type. The Falcon shrugged. That place is not exactly a walk in the park. Pushing the door open, the prince silently agreed with his grim assessment. Though in his head, he knew nobody here was deadlier than White Falcon himself. Shaking off the thought, the prince rode back out into the cold night. His path soon led to a narrow bridge, but a crowd blocked his way. He pulled on the reins, hoping to slip past them without any drama. Suddenly, his horse reared back, spooked by some unseen, terrifying force. Baron fought to calm the beast, which was trembling with absolute terror. One of the onlookers stepped forward, speaking in a low, somber voice. He explained that the dead were crossing over, asking the young traveler to wait a moment. Confused by the phrase, Baron peered down at the dark, rushing river. That's when he saw it, a floating farewell ceremony drifting downstream. He slid off his saddle, quietly agreeing not to disrupt their final journey. Every culture had its own sacred ritual for saying goodbye to the lost. Saresians believed departed souls drifted away inside vibrant red flowers. Legends warned that crossing a bridge, while those blossoms passed, would damn a soul forever. It would throw them off their path, leaving them permanently lost. Back in Sakrasha, they did things differently, placing sinistar flowers upon fresh graves. Their pale white petals withered at dawn, blooming into rich purple under the stars. A stark reminder that the living and the dead are forever cast apart. Day and night separated forever, it was their only closure. This sacred rite brought them closure. Meanwhile, Baron waited in absolute silence. He patiently waited for the sacred rite to end. Did his own brother ever lay a sinistar flower on his empty grave? Or did he unleash the Arcus Tempest long before that could happen? He wondered if he was just a stray soul. Honestly, his loneliness is heartbreaking. The villager who had stopped him broke the silence, thanking him for his patience. Giving the okay to cross, the man watched as the prince remained dead silent. He swung back onto his saddle. The past was gone, and he was Kairos's prince now. Tugging down his heavy hood, he looked the stranger dead in the eye. He murmured a quiet blessing, wishing the departed souls a peaceful journey. The old man gasped, utterly stunned as he recognized the royal face. Without another word, Baron trotted forward, finally crossing the bridge. Another villager called out, snapping the old man back to reality. Happened, but he insisted nothing had. That man was Arson the High Magistrate of Val Conum, the very man who caused Baron's death when Baron was the prince of Secretia. Arson removed his hood, whispering to his companion that their recent conversational partner seemed like a good person. Meanwhile, every shop, Baron Past was named Susbanian, which left him deep in thought. In front of a tavern sharing that exact name, he murmured about how truly incredible it was. It seemed the spies who constantly claimed Cirrus was crawling with Susbanian followers were completely right. Baron stepped inside where a man immediately welcomed him and offered to find a table. The young prince declined, calmly explaining that he actually had business up on the fourth floor. As he pointed upward, the worker was visibly taken aback. With a slightly strained voice, he nodded and opened the door for the prince. He led the way, with the young royal following close behind. The guide opened a final door, wishing him well. Callian stepped into an empty room containing only a few tables and chairs, soon spotting a wall coat rack. With a highly unusual detail, Callian recalled the secret intelligence he had purchased from the White Falcon, which detailed the underground activity center of Cirrus. Stepping forward, the prince gripped the coat rack and rotated it left, activating a hidden mechanism. The device slid open a secret door right next to him, demanding to go to the fourth floor of a two-story building was the secret password to enter. This meant the entire upper establishment was just a cover for the basement. Hidden far below, descending the stairs, he knew his actual target was not the popular gambling house on the third floor, but something lying much deeper underground. He finally reached a door and slowly pushed it open. Inside, brutal fighters clashed in violent combat. It looked like a packed arena, surrounded by bloodthirsty spectators. This was exactly where he needed to be. The rowdy crowd roared, urging the fighters to strike each other with far more brutality after betting on their favored champion to win. Right then, the announcer screamed out that they had a winner, another triumph for Gerard, the reigning champion. The announcer declared that payouts would start immediately. Anyone who placed their bets on the white side needed to collect their well-deserved winnings. While the bloodied loser was dragged out, the crowd vehemently cursed his name. Watching from a corner, the prince noted how the thick stench made the air suffocating, filled with the primal screams of people who had abandoned their humanity. It was a repulsive sight. An arena worker approached Baron, tapping his shoulder to tell him that he still needed to pay. Baron handed over the money, prompting the man to summon a host to guide him to table 27. A gorgeous host with blue hair and a red dress approached Callian. Taking his arm, she gestured to follow, leaving him wondering if she could even speak. As she turned, Callian caught a glimpse of her ear and froze. It was horribly mutilated, revealing dark truth. None of these girls were here by choice. He stared at the tracking collars around their necks, lost in dark thoughts about how they were kept under constant surveillance. Then, a young woman gave him a soft nudge, pointing right at a betting tray as if asking if he wanted to play. Baron quickly reached inside, thinking he should play along, until he finally got what he came for. He tossed his coin onto the black side. Simple rules. You wagered cash on a fighter, and if they won, the winning side walked away with double. Bet 3, you leave with 6. Bet 6 and you get 12, stacking up massive winnings. Right after, the winner of the 10th bout arrived, Pantherin of the Steel Legs. Once again, the host announced that payment tickets would be distributed soon, reminding everyone on the black side to go collect winnings. Everyone gasped. Baron's 3 coins exploded into 1536. Everyone stared at the massive pile on the table, whispering in disbelief. Still, Baron knew they were not here for coins. For simple gold. Next up was the final fight with 4 times the stakes. That is correct, the ultimate match everyone had been waiting for, as declared by the host. On the white corner stood Sean the Raging Hammer, and on the black side was the stubborn, unwavering challenger. The prince stared in complete disbelief when he recognized the fighter. Instantly, Callan remembered the man once admitting he was just a fighter forced to spill innocent blood for simple coins until the day his little sister passed away, completely changing his path. Just then, the host shouted to the roaring crowd, presenting the fighter as the man began to stretch for the match. A voice once asked Kyrie if he wanted to be a knight. He answered with his hand over his chest, saying he wanted to be a sword, not a knight. His only desire was to be the prince's blade. Baron remembered that final moment in life when he urged him to grasp his weapon and never surrender. Now, Kyrie stepped into the ring, with the host introducing him as the demonic eye. Instantly, the young prince grabbed his mountain of coins and slammed them on the tray, shouting that he would bet every single coin on black. Pure madness. The attendant froze. The entire crowd gasped. Talk about a massive gamble, betting everything on a complete underdog. Spectators whispered, wondering if he was completely brainless or just insane. He merely smiled as if he knew what he was doing. No worries, the host then bellowed. Kyrie had never won a single match, asking if he could rewrite history. Today, a voice nearby asked the young prince if he really wanted to throw his gold down the drain. It was a tall, blond man sitting just ahead who turned around to face Baron, advising him to bet on someone else. Since his choice had never won a single match, Baron ignored him, asking the nearby attendant if she had finished counting his massive pile. He confirmed once more that all his coins were on the black side, demanding confirmation. The blond man grew slightly irritated, muttering that he was only trying to warn him since it was not his own cash. The announcer shouted that the raging hammer rarely left opponents standing, triggering wild cheers from the massive crowd. Standing there, Kyrie observed the rookie who had risked absolutely everything on him, ready for battle. Kyrie's opponent sneered that yet another rookie gambler would go hungry for blood because of some brat refusing to give up the ring. Both fighters faced off and the battle instantly began, but before the heavy clanking chains could even hit the ground, Kyrie's opponent lunged right at him. This beast immediately unleashed a savage, relentless assault, pressing the attack. Kyrie covered up to protect his skull, but a nasty left hook followed. Yet he somehow threw up his guard, blocking the strike. His quick opponent mocked him for being too slow, then drove a heavy boot right into Kyrie's ribs, sending him flying back as he coughed up blood. While the bloodthirsty crowd screamed for a finish, Baron watched in absolute disbelief. Slamming his fist onto the table, the young prince grew completely furious. Without his sword, Kyrie was acting like a total punching bag. Why is he letting himself get absolutely destroyed? Baron wondered. Kyrie tried swinging back, but his slow reaction time only earned him more insults. The brute countered with a devastating blow, roaring at him to just surrender. Then he kept raining down punches, screaming that Kyrie was officially done for. Just as the monster wound up for the lethal final strike, Baron leaped from his seat and shouted, desperately trying to get Kyrie's attention. Drop your shoulder, he yelled across the arena, right before the fist connected. Kyrie heard the command, though he had no idea why. Still, he dipped his shoulder, narrowly slipping past the raging hammer's terrifying punch. Crouching low, he coiled his body like a spring to build up power. Clenching his fist, Kyrie prepared to strike. Upstairs, Baron smirked with pride. Finally, Kyrie unleashed an absolute rocket of a punch right into the brute's gut. He did not stop there, immediately launching into a fierce combination. Without showing any exhaustion, Kyrie unleashed a brutal barrage of heavy blows. A final skull-shattering right hook connected, sending the monster's teeth flying everywhere. The giant crashed onto the canvas, completely knocked cold. The entire arena fell dead silent. Absolutely nobody expected this underdog to actually pull off a miracle victory. Spectators rubbed their eyes, wondering if they were hallucinating. But the reality was clear. Kyrie had just destroyed the arena's champion. The referee raised his hand, leaving the gamblers absolutely furious over lost fortunes. Scanning the stands, Kyrie locked eyes with the person who saved him. With that timely advice, Baron was grinning ear to ear, but before the boy could even celebrate his massive win, a mysterious figure approached from behind. He told Kyrie to follow him. Watching this, Baron noticed the stranger was a hulking, dark-haired man built like a fortress. This giant quietly muttered that a powerful boss wanted to speak with the champion. Kyrie followed him into a back room where a shady figure lounged on a sofa, clapping. You made a fortune off just 3 coins, the man sneered, while his guard stood watch near the exit. Suddenly, that same bodyguard slowly drew his sharp blade from its sheath while the boss kept talking about all that gold. Flashy, greedy smiles showed off his gold tooth as he shook his head, saying, "A little kid should not be carrying around that much money." Outside, Baron smirked. These lowlifes did not even have the decency to try and negotiate first. They were honestly way more foolish than the prince had originally anticipated. With a furious look, the chief orders the young prince to remove his hood. He wants a clear look before breaking his nose, but Callian asks if he's sure. This hood is the only thing keeping them out of serious trouble, the prince warns. But the chief, filled with curiosity, simply ignores the warning. He gestures to his henchmen. Now, they need to remove that hood. 2 burly thugs advance toward the young prince. One thug reaches for the hood, telling him not to be ashamed. They just want to see the face he hides, but a sudden blade stops them. His reaching hand is swiftly intercepted by Callian, who holds a sharp dagger. Callian asks the thug if people in his line of work should be faster. Where is your instinct? The chief is completely startled by his dagger skills. He claims he needs more time as Callian twirls his dagger. Callian tells him to keep the gold. Instead, he wants Kyrie. He points the dagger at him, but the chief says his master won't be pleased. The boy has only just started earning his keep at the arena. The chief silently fumes. He refuses to accept such a ridiculous deal. Sure, the kid knows how to fight, but they have the numbers here. He observes the prince, confident that numbers will win the day. Meanwhile, Callian keeps his blade pointed steady. The chief refuses to yield. He refuses to hand Kyrie over, but then, a flash. Talk about a close shave. His table and pants are sliced clean in half. Callian calmly offers him a new deal: keep the gold and your life. With mana crackling from his blade, Callian asks if he finally has his attention. Terrified, the chief stammers, asking if that is actually a sword aura. He screams at a thug to run and bring Kyrie out immediately. Callian quietly hopes he won't have to show them again. Truth is, his current body can't handle that massive aura for long. Fortunately, the thug soon runs back, but there is a problem. The chief, still clutching his ruined pants, demands to know what's wrong. He explains that Kyrie refuses to leave a girl named Hina behind. Hearing that name instantly sparks a tragic memory in Callian's mind. He remembers Kyrie speaking of his sister in their tragic past life. She chose death back then, leaving Kyrie consumed by deep regret. Callian pats the chief's shoulder and says he knows exactly what to do. Desperate to end this, the chief screams to bring the girl too. But Callian stops him. He wants to fetch her himself. The chief promises a safe path, but Callian suddenly holds out his hand. The chief stares in confusion, totally lost by this gesture. With a mocking grin, Callian tells him to hand over the money. Specifically his 3 florins and the entrance fee. Soon they are outside. Callian waits on his horse while Kyrie and Hina stand right behind him. Hina looks terrified. She has absolutely no idea what's happening. Kyrie pulls her close to protect her, thanking Callian for saving them. The prince says nothing. He merely watches them from the corner of his eye. Kyrie softly admits he has no idea why the prince is helping them. While something rushed toward them, in a flash Callian ripped off his coat to cover Hina, telling them they could finally let their guard down. He promised he meant no harm, but Kyrie froze in absolute terror. Seeing the young man's face without his hood, Kyrie recognized him instantly. It was Prince Callian. The young half-elf bowed low, frantically apologizing. Because they should have recognized royalty sooner, Callian placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, telling him to stand tall and drop the formalities. No need to bow. These half-elf siblings had absolutely nothing to their name. Callian could easily guess the brutal hardships they had survived until now. In his past life, Kyrie failed to protect his sister. Imagine that guilt. Callian noted his stance, how he exposed his shoulders, a total beginner mistake. The prince asked if he wanted to be a knight, practicing so hard. Kyrie shook his head, saying he had no interest in becoming a knight. Instead, he wanted to be a sword that protects everyone. The prince was stunned. Intrigued, Callian handed his own sword over, offering a very specific condition. To become that sword, Kyrie first had to become Callian's ultimate shield. That was the price for the prince's lessons, leaving the boy to choose. He told Kyrie to find him once he decided. Kyrie asked why help them. Smiling softly, Callian simply said he had a real use for a sharp blade. But deep down, he knew this was the least he could do for him. To honor his loyal old friend, meanwhile, the empty, quiet streets loomed ahead. It was dead of night, outside the dark office of the Mage Association. Inside, the Master Mage Manisil studied a highly confidential report. The prince was deeply suspicious of Palun and wanted him watched constantly. Palun had hired an assassin at the banquet. Manisil finished reading. He slowly burned the letter to ashes, watching the hungry flames consume it. How on earth did his young apprentice obtain such dangerous, secret information? Right then, Callian strolled in, completely exhausted, his clothes totally messy. Grinning with relief, he announced his return, while Manisil eyeballed him. Taking in the disheveled look, the master asked if he got into a fight. The prince slumped into a chair, admitting some unexpected things happened. Preparing some fresh tea, the old mage chuckled at how busy he looked. It was indeed a long day, Callian agreed with a weary nod. He had gathered vital intel and even laid a trap for Dorsey's merchants. Stretching lazily, the prince wondered why his master looked so incredibly worried. He expected the old man to be far more impressed by his speed. But the master stayed quiet, focusing on brewing. Then Callian saw it. He stared in absolute awe as magic handled every single step. Honestly, who wouldn't be totally amazed by this wizard's setup? Seeing the starry-eyed look, Manisil teased him about expecting weird magic potions. Maybe some bubbling cauldron with a gross floating eyeball inside, the prince laughed. Well, almost, he joked. Then Callian caught sight of the desk. A rusty old dagger sat there, looking completely out of place. Leaning in closer, his eyes widened as he recognized the precise shape of the blade. It was the exact same weapon he had gotten earlier. The master questioned him. Callian stared in absolute shock. That dagger had no business being in this room. But before he can react, the weapon levitates, instantly snapping right toward him. It targets his chest directly, moving far too fast to escape. The master mage just stands there, calmly watching with his arms crossed. He remarks that despite having such a frail body, the prince is incredibly quick. Callian barely manages to evade, deflecting the blade with his own aura-infused weapon. The magical blade pivots midair as the wizard explains its mysterious origins. Created by Suspanian, this artifact conjures a copy of the opponent's hidden weapons. Catching the weapon, the elder asks if he considers it a fair warning. Prince Callian is left gasping for breath, since using mana absolutely wrecks his body. He realizes this whole encounter was just a test, and he totally overreacted. He acted far too rashly for what was clearly just a sudden test. The elder dryly asks how that is possible when he barely holds swords correctly. The exhausted prince collapses back onto the sofa, clutching his aching chest. Still struggling to breathe, he feels the wizard gently place a hand on his shoulder. The old man brings up their first meeting, admitting things did not go as planned. Yet over time, the old wizard noticed a string of highly unusual anomalies. He recalls his secret discussions with the king regarding the young royal. The king revealed that even the haughty nobles were stunned by Callian's transformation. Even the queen noted that upon discovering the poison, the prince fought to survive. He exhibited an intense will to live rather than any fear of dying. That fierce instinct only belongs to a warrior who has spilled oceans of blood. Besides, the wizard already foresaw the chaos at the recent cavalry display. He asks the prince for answers while casting a powerful healing spell. The soothing magic rapidly repairs his damaged body, giving him instant relief. Baron wonders if the old wizard actually distrusts his motives. However, he quickly realizes the mage is simply trying to build mutual trust. Slamming his hand on the table, Baron drops a massive bombshell. He is not Callian. He reveals his real name, Baron Secresia, as they lock eyes in tense silence. The old wizard quietly asks if the actual Prince Callian is truly dead. Baron shakes his head, explaining that the situation is far more complicated. He had doubts initially, but now he is absolutely sure Callian lives. He can still feel his lingering presence. The mage remembers their first talk. Back then, the boy claimed he did not want the crown, so what does Baron want? Calmly, Baron replies that his sole goal is to stop the impending wars. He still does not understand why Kyrie wants the legendary axis of time. If that root cause remains, this terrible nightmare will repeat itself. He is absolutely determined to uncover the dark truth behind it all. The wise mage calmly asks if this quest is for Prince Chase or himself. Completely confused by the strange question, Baron asks him to elaborate. The elder explains there is a crucial detail Baron must understand first. At this exact moment, Secresia only has Prince Chase. Chase is merely a concubine's son because the queen was completely barren. Therefore, there is no physical way for Baron to even exist here. This shocking revelation completely overwhelms Baron, leaving him totally speechless. He felt completely lost in an extreme void, wondering if he truly didn't belong in Secretia or anywhere else. The prince fell deep into his own thoughts and fears, questioning how all of this even happened. Callian's body was in perfect condition, yet Baron felt an uneasy sensation deep down. The prince confessed that he sometimes wondered if another soul had entered his original body, just as he had taken over Callian's. As long as he was alive, there could never be another Baron. The young prince looked incredibly sad about it all. He Knew that deep down, his situation felt exactly like stealing another person's life. The mage tried to ease his mind, explaining that Prince Chase remained the sole heir to the Secretion throne. He reminded Baron that the past and present were no longer identical, meaning the entire future had likely altered. The mage continued, explaining that the three princes of Caris faced mortal danger, unlike Baron, the Prince of Secretia, who had grown up surrounded by loyal friends. The mage maintained a very serious expression, leaving Baron and Callian's body quite surprised. The mage added that they shouldn't let themselves be chained by the past. Baron decided to clear the air, assuring the mage that his fears would never actually happen. He revealed that from his very first day in Caris, the moment he opened his eyes, he had completely given up on ever living as Baron again. This declaration left the mage utterly stunned, since he never expected such a firm choice. Baron then asked if the mage was really okay with everything, even with him not being the true crown prince of Caris. Smiling warmly, the mage reassured him that Baron had absolutely nothing to worry about, guaranteeing him that right from the start, only one single soul shared a connection with him and the priest. Later, riding side by side on their horses, Baron wondered if the wizard knew about the Arcus Tempest spell from the start. He asked if the wizard possessed deep knowledge regarding the temporal axis. The wizard kept a quiet, serious look while riding next to Baron. Then he explained that exactly 1 year ago, Prince Chase had tracked him down, looking for crucial advice about the temporal axis. The wizard had personally infiltrated Secretia, but found absolutely no information. Except for one detail, the axis was not created by human hands. Last month, he received a sudden letter from Secretia reporting the object's disappearance, right when Baron claims he traveled back 10 years. Talk about a massive twist. Baron realized that his regression happened at the exact moment the temporal axis vanished. Baron suggested that his return might actually be the cause of it. Before Baron could finish his thought, the wizard cut him off, saying that while this was indeed a massive riddle, they still lacked real answers. He revealed, however, that one specific person might know the truth, someone far more knowledgeable than himself who would soon cross paths with the prince. That person was Hispanian. Hearing this, Prince Callian quietly agreed with the wizard's plan. His rite of passage was drawing near, a sacred ceremony held whenever a new member officially joins the Hispanian royalty. In that moment, everyone finally learns Hispanian's true will. The wizard stressed that their top priority was simply staying alive to complete it, urging the prince to do whatever it takes. Baron simply replied that even if he failed, the seeds that were planted have already started to sprout. Back at the palace, back in his chambers, Callian's servant worries. The prince quietly examines the strange plant he received from the wizard. Noticing a subtle, odd detail, his servant advises him to wash up. Before heading off to bed, Callian just smiles and offers to show him something truly mind-blowing, something truly fascinating. Together, they step out onto the palace terrace. Out on the freezing terrace under the cold morning sky, the prince inspects the plant. From the Mage Society, a specimen with secrets unknown to the public. He recalls how he faked a clumsy accident just to secretly slip poison into the flower soil, slipping the lethal venom inside without anyone in the room noticing his move. He closely watched his servant's reaction. An ordinary target wouldn't survive 7 days against that deadly, potent poison, but somehow this plant is perfectly fine, proving that someone switched it. Out on the terrace, Ian spots a light. A bright, mysterious light in the courtyard instantly catches the servant's eye. The intense, beautiful radiance completely captivates him as it stretches across the palace courtyard. If they swapped it, they couldn't just throw the real pot away. They would be forced to keep it hidden somewhere incredibly secure inside the palace. Now here's the ultimate trap. He is finally about to uncover the shocking truth. Everything points to the main owner of Hesha Palace. May Celestia await him. May Celestia await him. The next morning brings rain, and Callian quietly watches it fall. A sudden, quiet knock at his massive chamber door makes him turn around immediately to see Ian enters carrying a warm tray of morning tea to greet his master. The prince surprisingly asks his loyal servant if he managed to sleep well during the night. Callian looks incredibly healthy and in high spirits today, shocking Ian. The servant confirms he slept fine and asks how the prince slept. Setting the heavy tray on the table, Ian admits it feels incredibly strange to him to hear Callian ask about his sleep first, noting the remarkably early start. He jokes that the sun might actually rise in the west today. While Callian slowly lifts his cup. Ian politely asks if the heavy sound of the rain woke him up. Callian feels the poison. It is subtle, but Celestine definitely increased the dose. He casually asks Ian if there are any major noble gatherings scheduled for next week. The servant confirms a massive assembly will take place with everyone attending. Even His Majesty the King is expected to attend, making it a highly crucial event. He learns a grand banquet is scheduled exactly 1 week after that meeting. That banquet will be his absolute perfect opportunity to test this venom. So Celestine, enjoy your desperate, sneaky little schemes while you still have the chance. Callian quickly takes out the powerful magic pill from his small pouch and swallows it. He hands the empty teacup back to Ian, who suddenly looks extremely worried. The worried servant asks if the prince has managed to eat any actual solid food recently. Callian replies that he has only been consuming those highly dense nutrients. Closing his pill pouch, Callian admits he feels a bit weak. He decides to head down for breakfast, and Ian quickly moves to assist His Highness. Helping him, the servant is secretly shocked that the prince finished the tea. Ian wonders what is making him so anxious as they finally head down to breakfast. At the table after the incident at the theater, Planche was missing from the meal. Callian preferred it this way, ensuring Planche would not be there to ruin his plans. As the first prince, Randall, drank his wine, Callian casually mentioned that the roses would soon bloom. Randall was startled by this remark and quickly glanced at Callian, who simply smiled. They locked eyes for a brief moment before Randall stood up and walked away, leaving his meal unfinished. Ian whispered, asking if it was not a bit strange to bring up roses during breakfast. Callian replied that it was simply because he noticed flowers in the corridor and remembered Randall's love for roses. The servant noted that made little sense, but Callian just kept sipping his coffee. Later, Prince Callian was training out in the rain within the castle gardens, completely soaked in a mix of sweat and rainwater. He leaned against a tree, panting in exhaustion. A figure approached, remarking that his condition seemed to decline daily. Asking what he was doing, the prince replied that if he shirked his physical training, he could never hope to improve. It was his master, the great mage Manisil, who had appeared. The wizard mentioned he was speaking with King Lemon. Callian was shocked he used the king's first name, but the wizard shrugged it off as just a very common name. Manisil then asked why he had been summoned, and Callian answered that he wanted to ask for 2 things. The first was that he needed 2 new identities, which the wizard promised to easily provide. The prince added that second, he wanted to investigate the mysterious deaths of several nobles, specifically looking into their connection to King Lemon. With a calm smile, Manisil assured him that was no issue at all, praising Callian for being polite before asking if the young prince was in a rush. The wizard warned that the poison dosage had increased, and he believed he had already identified the culprit. He already had a strong suspect in mind. While Callian warned that the enemy would soon start putting pressure on him. It might be hard to touch a great mage, but his master needed an ace up his sleeve. Callian concluded. Manisil asked if Callian was perhaps planning to use him as a simple distraction. Callian, with a steady gaze, replied, not as a distraction but as a weapon. That is right, a weapon, I know the power of wizards better than anyone, those who killed me in my own country. The army of wizards, the white demons. Callian then concluded that he would build a society of mages completely loyal to him. Manisil was stunned by the young prince's bold declaration. He explained that wizards were unlike knights, born with their power, not simply trained. Callian countered that there was a secret he had not shared yet, something that succeeded in the previous timeline, instantly capturing the wizard's attention. Back when King Lemon first proposed establishing his very own society of mages in Caris, everyone, including Lemon's own court, laughed. The idea was dismissed quickly, yet this allowed the king to quietly initiate his plan without drawing any unwanted attention from the public. Shortly after the founding of this mage society, Lemon met his end under highly suspicious circumstances. With the king dead, the society swore their absolute loyalty to his heir. He became a pawn in Planche's conquest, something Manisil was already fully aware of. But this time, the prince was determined not to let things play out so easily. Baron knew he had to tread carefully with House Romaine, constantly plotting to ruin everything. He revealed his hidden ace, the very poison tea Celestine had been serving him. The wizard was completely baffled by the young prince's strain and dangerous claim. He asked Callian to explain, but the prince only offered a quiet, knowing smile. The young prince promised that the truth would show itself soon enough. Sensing his disappointment, Callian urged the wizard to go speak with the king. He knew the monarch was carrying a heavy burden of worries these days. Callian assured him everything was fine, predicting Callisti would soon stumble on its own. They will be forced to negotiate, the prince noted with calm confidence. They had to seize this opening. Meanwhile, dark plots were forming elsewhere. A maid reported they were administering more poison, just as Her Majesty ordered. Slamming her hand down, the queen made it clear she tolerated no failures. Gossip was spreading like wildfire, and she absolutely despised being talked about. She demanded to know how much longer she had to endure this inconvenience. Shaking with absolute terror, the servant quickly promised it would never happen again. Their tense conversation was interrupted as a figure approached the royal table. The queen lamented her stubborn son, who refused to carry out his duties. It was Planche himself, looking absolutely furious as he confronted his mother. He warned her to stop meddling in his affairs, but she fired right back. She snapped that his thoughts meant nothing, since he had done nothing for his future. Dramatic as always, she played the part of the suffering mother. She sighed that a mother must go to any lengths for her son's future. If she had to push herself to the limit, so be it. Then, Planche clenched his fist in pure rage, turned his back, and stormed off. Leaving his mother behind, he stormed out. Sipping her tea, she laughed inside. He was far too fragile to ever stand in her way to the throne. Fast forward to the big moving day, where the weather was absolutely beautiful. Kyrie teased that someone was in a very bright mood and singing all day. He asked if she was really that excited for what lay ahead. Hina cheered that they were finally heading to the palace to see the prince. Kyrie playfully asked if she had feelings for him, and Hina gushed. She called him absolutely incredible and could not wait for tonight's big banquet. Meanwhile, palace tailors hurried to finish the young prince's formal attire. Ian was adjusting the final details, reminding him the banquet started very soon. He warned the prince he had only 1 hour, but Callian had other plans. He quietly told Ian that it was finally time to end this little game. The weak young prince of the past was forced to poison himself, but no more. This time he would refuse their deadly traps with absolute elegance. Entering the grand banquet hall, Callian's arrival was loudly announced to the court. He and the queen locked eyes, a silent declaration of the coming storm. Meanwhile, Ian was riding like the wind, keeping the prince's secret mission in mind. Callian had trusted him with 2 highly important letters to deliver right away. One went directly to the Arcane Enclave, and the other to Master Alan. Ian had to report back before visiting his master. The prince promised to look after himself, and that everything would be fine, but Ian was still pretty distressed by this, since it was not the first time the prince had acted so reckless, while Ian shook off his worry as useless paranoia. But right then, the scene. Wait for it, the scene cuts right back to the banquet as a glass shatters. This startled everyone in the room, especially the king. Someone was collapsing straight to the floor right in front of the queen. Meanwhile, at the Arcane Enclave, a purple-haired woman informed Manhwa that all the research files he requested were ready. The official documents alone would take days to sift through, she noted. She was Yuria Siren, the head of the Saresian Arcane Enclave, but to think something so massive had been kept completely hidden from the public. She doubted the nobles had a choice in this. Lesser houses simply would not dare offend House Roman. Yuria concluded they had to protect their own necks from unfortunate accidents. Yuria then asked Manhwa if he knew what Prince Callian planned to do with that dangerous information. Manhwa fell silent, deeply contemplating before he could reply. Suddenly, the door burst wide open and a panicked voice called for Yuria. It was Ian, panting heavily and drenched in sweat from his desperate rush. Seeing that both of them were safely there, he looked relieved. Ian handed Prince Callian's letter over to Manhwa. While the mage read, Ian passed a second letter to Yuria. Manhwa suddenly stood straight up, grabbed his coat, and demanded where tonight's banquet was being held. A startled Ian asked where he was rushing off to, reminding him that he would need an invitation. Yuria yelled out that there was absolutely no time for formalities because Callian's life was on the line. Ian was visibly shocked by Yuria's sharp declaration. The letter revealed that tonight Callian would risk his own life to force Callisti to negotiate, and if things fell apart, he was counting on Manhwa to save him. 1 hour before this showdown, Callan was quietly having tea face-to-face with the queen. He suggested that they both finally drop their masks, snapping her fan shut. The queen agreed, tapping the fan rhythmically against the table. She remarked that it would barely make any difference at all. Calmly taking a sip of his tea, Callan mentioned he was talking about dropping their masks, not their basic manners, his cold eyes locking onto the queen. A petty duel of words. Is that really the best he could do? She expected to be surprised. The queen scoffed. She stood up, stating she had genuinely expected much more and deeply regretted wasting her precious time. A commoner like Callan, she added, would never truly understand how to keep an esteemed guest entertained. Callan simply replied that he already knew all about the poison, placing his teacup down. Callan said he had quite enough and could never acquire a taste for it. The queen smoothly feigned ignorance, innocently asking what on earth he meant. With a chilling smile, she told him his little joke had not had the desired mark, but Callan told her not to worry because he had come prepared. There were plenty of other ways, he noted, to sharpen her dull mind. He wondered aloud what he should put on the line to make her behave, slowly picking up a small vial. His own heart was the only valuable thing he owned, so he decided to risk it. The prince explained, showing the vial. Callan calmly told her that the liquid inside it would completely stop his heart. For a brief moment, the queen leaned in closer as Callian speaks up. Silver spoons and magic are totally useless. No catalyst can detect this deadly toxin, but he is completely safe. Sasbanian's blessing guards his heart. However, there is a catch. The shield blocks only one strike. Drinking the poison now is suicide. The poison will spread and end his life. Still, he asks her directly if he dies alone with her, who takes the blame. The queen sneers. She bursts into a loud, mocking laugh. Does he think a simple threat can actually stop her? He should not dream that he is the first opponent she has ever faced like this. Everyone knows she killed Callian's mother, yet they stayed silent. Why would things change now? She does not fear him. The prince is furious. He demands to know her next move. With a wicked smile on her face, she tells him to feel free to do it. The prince agrees and drinks the tea, draining the entire cup in front of her. He downs it in a single gulp, and she merely watches with a wicked smile. What a fool! Who would ever dare to accuse her? Not even King Romain himself will ever be able to force her to submit. She smiles. Nothing in Caris is out of her reach. She took the queen's throne and slowly removed every single obstacle in her path. She got everything she wanted, but she was still missing one final thing. There was still something she needed to claim as she stared at the king. The banquet is announced. Suddenly, a violent cough breaks the silence. The queen hides her smirk. Finally, only he remains. Suddenly, Prince Callian collapses heavily onto the floor. He coughs up strawberry juice. The room erupts in panic. People rise in a panic, desperately calling for a priest to save him. Behind her elegant fan, the queen smirks. Callian lies completely helpless. He lies at her feet. Despair grips the room. Was the drink poisoned, or was he targeted long before the banquet? Who had he met before arriving? Suddenly, a man demands absolute silence. He warns that anyone making noise will pay with their life. The queen feels victorious. No one dares speak. The king rushes forward. He holds the prince in his arms, desperately begging him to hold on. Callian whispers "father," a word that completely shocks the king. He remembers Callian's dying mother begged him to protect their son. Callian struggles to speak as his voice fails, simply pointing a finger. The king understands. The queen acts shocked by this tragedy. She announces she cannot stay in such a disgraceful place. She turns to flee, but the king is not letting her go. Holding his son, the king demands how she dared do this. He screams Queen Callice's name aloud, freezing the entire room in shock. The queen turns around. Her triumphant smile is completely shattered. Her triumphant smile instantly twists into sheer, wide-eyed astonishment. Whispers spread. Guests whisper that the two were together earlier. Many guests openly wonder if she poisoned the prince right there. No one would be surprised if she actually did it. The queen grips her fan tightly. Hiding her face behind the fan, she tells him he has no idea what he is talking about, asking if the prince did not already suffer from a chronic illness. The furious king snaps back that she was right there when Freya died. And every single night remembers the same thing. He recalls her claiming that Freya passed away from sickness. Salacia, even if it is true, you will be the one to blame, the king warns. The queen asks who can prove He was ever healthy, since no one here would believe him anyway, wearing a small smile. On her face, she suggests that maybe the princes who gather every day for breakfast know about Callian's health. Maybe they should ask him instead, the queen says. The king orders her to shut up. In a mocking voice, she claims to just be worried. In this mess, she says, our son is only getting worse. Furious, the king draws his blade, demanding to know how she dares refer to him as our son. Whispers spread that of all people she should never say those words. Instantly, the queen's face pales. Plotch keeps insisting that Callian was perfectly fine and that he never noticed anything wrong with the prince. At least, that is how it seemed since they last saw each other. Now, the queen is absolutely furious with Plotch. Right then, the doors swing open and the priest is announced. The queen uses the distraction to retreat to Huga Palace, while the king begs the holy priest to save his son. But as the priest gets ready to use his weight, out of nowhere, a glowing barrier suddenly snaps into place around the prince. Someone blocks his path, stopping the spell before it can even start. It is the court mage Manhwa, drenched in sweat, warning that she wants him to die. He even mutters that killing him quickly would be kinder. The king, enraged, demands to know what he is doing, shouting that Callian needs immediate help. Manhwa explains that the prince has a mana circle in his heart. If a mage's circle touches divine power, no matter how much luck they have, their heart will burst instantly, killing them. Right on cue, Callian coughs uncontrollably, thrashing in pain. The panicked king asks what they can do if holy magic is out of the question. Can magic heal him? Manhwa replies that if they had a healer who used natural energy, there might be a chance, but with normal magic it is hopeless. The king orders him to find some way quickly. As the prince suffers, suddenly Manhwa remembers a dark moment from his past, a terrible memory that had shaken him to his core. He sees a man on his knees, blood spilling from his lips, looking just like Callian. The dying man wonders why this is happening to him. Snapping back to reality, Manhwa cradles the prince in his arms. He sits on the cold floor, resting Callian's head in his lap. Callian looks up through blurry vision, asking his master why he is making that expression. Manhwa never imagined he would have to cast this forbidden spell again. In his mind, he relives casting this exact same spell on that dying man years ago, promising it would take away his pain and calling him a stubborn fool. Days pass and the busy city streets return to normal. A leaf drifts down, floating right past a walking couple. A leaf hits a man's face, startling him. Looking up, he spots countless others drifting down. Each one carries a written plea for the truth about the Bryson family, demanding justice for the 37 victims they killed. The powerful house finds themselves trapped in a massive scandal, amid rumors that the queen tried to poison Prince Callian. When their other horrific crimes finally came to light, it sparked massive public outrage. Suddenly, nobody wants to associate with them, fearing one wrong move will ruin their own lives. Even the king blames Queen Celestine, naming her the true culprit. The people whisper, is the queen really a murderer? Pure chaos. Furious citizens deface the palace walls, shouting for justice. They want Celestine gone. Meanwhile, the mage Alan Manhwa remembers Prince Callian stating that to build their own private mage troupe, they must strike while Celestine is totally ruined. At the palace, the king carefully reads a letter sent from his son, looking deep in thought. To his surprise, the prince has the exact same goal, founding a powerful mage unit. Standing by Callian's bedside, Queen Celestine remarks that the mage association must be incredibly swamped. Hiding her cold smile behind a fan, she inquires when he managed to plan all this. Callian pretends to know nothing, saying he has absolutely no clue what she means. He casually mentions that he finally got a nice, long rest thanks to her. That deeply annoys her because, for someone who was just on the brink of death, he looks way too healthy. Unbelievable. Joking that he almost saw the afterlife, gasping and sweating, Callian adds that his fragile health makes a long chat pretty difficult right now. If she has nothing else to say, he tells her he will just rest. Furious and cornered, the queen asks if they can negotiate their terms step by step. Callian scoffs. She should have suggested that a week ago. Things are different now. Still, he agrees to listen to her proposal. Taking the bait, the queen proposes that if he declares the rumors false, she won't block his plans. The prince burst out laughing at her offer, absolutely amused by her audacity. He tells her she is completely misjudging the situation, hiding her burning fury. The queen watches as the young prince reminds her he doesn't need her Permission anyway, he then asks if she should be leaving. Celestine grips her. Fans so hard it might snap. Standing up, she points a finger and demands to know his real price. With a calm smile, Callian asks how the sound of weapons can be so loud in a land ruled by Susbanian's descendants. He delivers his final term, the complete dissolution of Pable's Night Order. This leaves the queen completely speechless. She stammers, asking if he means every last one of them. Pable is the elite force Marquis Brighton gifted to Kelletsi. Losing them means stripping away half of her military strength, but Callian is unyielding. Disband them entirely and let the mage troop rise. There are no other negotiations. His absolute ruthlessness leaves her boiling with anger. The prince quietly calls for his loyal servant. Ian steps forward, presenting the documents to the stunned queen, saying, "Here is the absolute testimony," with the sacred oath seal clearly visible on the page. Celestine stares in utter horror. An oath seal cannot be faked, the prince explaining how the magic literally carves the terms of the contract right onto their hearts. Break that promise and your heart physically shatters, ending in certain death. That lethal threat is exactly why Queen Celestine rushed to see Callian after he woke. Meanwhile, the first prince, Randall, was quietly caring for the roses in his garden. Spotting a single fallen rose on the dirt, he stopped, lost in deep thought. He kept remembering the exact moment Callian collapsed. Their eyes had locked right before the fall. He also remembered their strange chat at the cafe when Callian pointed out that the roses would bloom soon, and right then, he realized Callian wanted to be a part of making that happen. Now curious to see those roses bloom, he actually decided to go along with Callian's wishes. When the young prince went down, Randall was ready to step in, but Planche beat him to it, insisting that Callian had been completely fine just seconds ago. Randall was stunned. Planche actually saved him. Talk about a wild twist. Randall knew the tides were turning. Meanwhile, back in the prince's room, Callian was laying out the harsh terms of the magical oath to Queen Celestine. It was a spell that literally branded their agreement right onto their hearts. One tiny slip-up, and their hearts would rupture, causing instant death. Since there is barely any trust between us, Callian noted coldly. He asked the queen what she planned to do next. Celestine stayed silent, frozen in pure shock. Finally, she snatched the quill from Callian's servant and signed the paper. The very second she did, raw magic began to glow, wrapping around her arm as she finished her name. Just like that, the deal was sealed, locking their lives together in an unseen, magical bind. Furious, Queen Celestine slammed the quill down, snapping it in two, spinning around. To leave, Callian told her not to get things twisted. He went on, reminding her that he was never close with his royal brothers, and on the terrible day he was poisoned, Planche did not step in to save him. If Celestine had spoken up back then, the king's sword would have severed her head right then and there. Hearing this, Celestine could only picture Planche, looking totally stunned by Callian's warning. Still, she quickly masked her shock and left the room. Callian simply watched her walk out. Sometime later, the great mage Manhwa visited, expressing absolute shock upon learning of Queen Celestine's visit. Meanwhile, Callian was busy eating bananas. Manhwa sighed in relief, realizing the boy was just incredibly hungry. Mouthful, Callian casually mentioned how delicious the bananas were. The mage pointed out that after almost dying, anything would taste fantastic. Smiling, the prince replied that he had done his part. Manhwa was absolutely fuming at that relaxed smile. Seriously, how is he so calm? They could have easily been visiting his grave today, if it had not been for the elven siblings showing up right then, and the sheer luck that the girl Hina was a nature healer. He would have died, as the maid stressed how close he came to dying. Callian looked up in surprise. He genuinely had no idea Hina was a healer. Manhwa asked if he really. Back then in his past life, the young man had only one connection. That was Kyrie. Hina was already gone. The mage had his answers. With no more questions, the mage was absolutely furious at Callian. Drinking poison with no escape plan, except a divine blessing, was insane. As Callian mumbled an apology, the irritated mage tossed a paper to him. They were the official identification certificates for those kids. The prince requested them earlier, but completely forgot about them by now. But wait, a sudden detail on the paper catches his eye. Both siblings carried the Baron's surname, and the mage quietly explained why. They needed a last name, so he simply used his own old name instead. Callian carefully studied every detail, a faint smile on his face. Thanking the mage, he stated that the documents were fully legitimate. The mage guaranteed their safety and status right from the beginning. He confirmed the children officially belonged to the Baron territory. Then came a shocker. The mage revealed Ramin was the one who arranged it all. Manisal then asked how Callian felt about the massive rumors spreading. Rumors of him being the king's favorite, Callian was skeptical. But after the king's dramatic actions in public, it was completely unavoidable. The prince felt deeply unsettled and confused by these heavy emotions. He felt this warmth belonged to the original owner, not to him. He sat silently on the couch, lost in deep thought. Callian tried to shake it off, calling Ian over to clear the table. His loyal servant approached, standing before him with an unusually serious look. The servant had something to tell the prince, who gently urged him to speak. Ian quietly requested to stop serving as his assistant from now on. This completely unexpected news left the prince utterly stunned and speechless. Then a memory fades in, a child's tiny feet rushing across a grand hall. He hurried past massive pillars, heading up to the second floor. The small boy eagerly peeked from behind a heavy wooden counter. He called out at the top of his voice, announcing his arrival. Inside lay a very sick man, his body covered in thick white bandages. Smiling warmly, the boy greeted his sick brother, who weakly whispered a greeting back. He asked his brother if he heard the crickets calling this morning. The brother weakly sighed that those horrible insects drove him mad. The brother sighed weakly, but the little boy remained cheerful. He insisted they had strange wings, making noise from their bellies. He eagerly promised to catch one of the bugs for him tomorrow morning. But his completely bandaged brother quickly shut down that horrifying idea. He hated bugs. He asked the boy to just play his violin instead. The sick brother then mentioned how talented the boy's son was with medicine. The boy sighed that his son was too busy. How could he ask that of him? Right outside the door, deeply unsettling hushed voices reached the young child's ears. A man pleaded, saying this hurt him too, begging for some other way. Back then, the boy never understood how painful those words truly were. Right then, the older brother weakly called out for Siloyan. He was told to look his brother straight in the eyes and understand. Dying loud screams echoed. They had to escape now. Take Siloyan out. They had to run before the fire spread too fast. That was how his brother, just a day before his 15th birthday, decided to end his own suffering along with everyone else's. Since that day, seasons quickly passed. And soon winter arrived. Eventually, the crickets began to chirp once more in the garden as he grew more isolated. His father, unable to watch him suffer, finally pulled him from his room. The boy always sought comfort in his father's embrace, leaning his head on his shoulder. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice asked what sort of boy he was, and another replied he was the third prince. Bowing his head in deep grief, the red-eyed young man looked incredibly sad. Siloyan could tell just how heavy the young prince's heart truly was. Timidly, Ian looked at Callian, asking to resign from his position as servant. Callian stared at him in complete shock, asking what on earth he meant. Sobbing heavily, Ian began to speak, as the person closest to the prince. He confessed that he did not understand what was actually happening. Furthermore, he confessed that he had been the one bringing the daily poison. Callian stared at his servant, who seemed completely crushed by guilt. It was all his fault, Ian admitted, weeping as he confessed his ignorance. He failed to stand by the prince's side during times of extreme danger. Once again, the prince had almost died. Suddenly, Ian saw his late brother's face, warning him from beyond not to ignore the fact that he was dying. The phantom reached out, but Callian quickly urged Ian to look at him. Waking from his trance, the young servant opened his tear-filled eyes. The prince then gently demanded to know who was standing right in front of him. Callian's steady gaze made it clear that he expected a real, honest answer. Weeping, Ian replied that it was Callian, who then placed a comforting hand over his servant's heart and firmly declared that he would not die. He noted that Ian had been by his side from the start, helping him endure everything. He only survived because of Ian's dedicated care, even if they still had things to learn about each other. But he was certain of one thing: Ian would keep protecting him from now on. Hearing this, the servant wept harder. Overwhelmed with profound emotion, Ian fell to his knees, crying tears of gratitude. The prince ordered him to get up immediately, as Ian realized there was no turning back. Offering his hand, Callian made him realize there was one person he had to protect forever. Ian then vowed to eliminate anyone who made the prince suffer, leaving Callian to wonder if he wanted to pursue revenge on his behalf. Ian confirmed that he absolutely did, out of love. The prince urged him to stop, warning that the giant elephants must remain quiet or a devastating war would break out, but Ian told him to forget the conflict, even if he had to abandon his status as a Siegfried. Callian casually called him an elephant, leaving Ian stunned that he actually knew. Callian merely shrugged with a smile, giving a vague answer when asked since when. Ian insisted this was too dangerous to know, admitting his intense hatred for his own father. In response, Callian assured him that once they finished their task, shaking off those nuisances, Callian just wants a coffee, before asking Ian if they should bet on who would grow taller. But later, inside a dream, Baron sees Callian. They face each other. Callian smiles calmly while Baron looks utterly astonished. Callian steps closer. He approaches Baron and stops inches away, still smiling calmly. Then he slips right past him. Baron watches Callian walk toward two other figures. They seem like old friends. Callian then turns and looks back at him. Baron is utterly terrified by the whole scene. Shaking, he reaches his hand to Callian. Callian's smile fades into a surprised expression, but then that grin returns. This time his gaze is full of confidence. Callian whispers something that jolts Baron awake. Just before waking, Callian smiled down at Baron as if the boy were falling. Baron plummeted as Callian simply watched. Then he snaps awake, still inside Callian's body. He sits up in bed, his mind racing to make sense of that bizarre dream. Later, during a private funeral for the original prince, Manhwa asks a heavy question. Did he truly move on in the end? Callian quietly replies with his own theory. The original prince probably wanted to enjoy his deepest desires before departing this world. But he was in such a rush he just left. Now Callian vows to change things. He promises to dedicate this new life to him, fulfilling every single unfulfilled wish. He notes that if that royal life was nothing but chains, then he feels a strange trace of envy for the original prince's freedom. Addressing Manhwa directly, Callian declares he is done pretending to be ignorant. Things must change. There are too many loose ends and favors left behind by the former prince. He will make this second life count. Meanwhile, Pablesag's Night Corps is swiftly dismantled. Its members are sent straight back to the powerful Marquis Brisson. Romain warns them all to ignore any wild, baseless rumors regarding the royals. Meanwhile, King Elon officially announces the creation of a brand new mage corps. 3 months pass. Ian and a maid realize they desperately need a tailor. He tells her to explain that the prince's old clothes are simply too small now. He has outgrown them all. Soon, Callian walks into the royal meeting chamber. King Elon and Romain are waiting. Romain gasps, noticing how much Callian has grown. He points out that the young prince is already looking taller than Planche. King Elon chimes in, asking if Callian has prepared everything for Rosalita. Callian confirms that everything is ready, especially with his birthday approaching. Manhwa then speaks up. There is someone he needs to introduce. This highly anticipated introduction is the entire reason the prince was summoned here. This person will serve as his official guardian during the upcoming Rosalita. The guest enters, introducing himself with a polite bow. It is an absolute honor. It is Arson Hertz. Callian stares in absolute silent horror. Romain adds that Hertz is an extremely talented mage who will join their corps. He hopes they will train together and form a close, powerful bond over time. Callian hides his fury, sarcastically calling this an incredibly unexpected birthday surprise. He then asks exactly when this elite mage corps will be officially established. King Elon answers that it will take time, as they still lack a name. They have no roster, no uniform, and absolutely nothing is set in stone yet. There is still a very long road ahead. This is merely the first step. Hertz smiles softly at the prince. Elon asks Romain if he wants to name the new magic corps. Romain already has an idea. He has thought about this forever. Smiling, Romain proposes the name Valken, hoping it fits their grand ambitions. Prince Callian nods in approval. Elon teases him. It seems Romain was ready. He was just waiting for the question, which is honestly a massive relief. A brief silence. Callian asks Hertz what he thinks of the idea. Smiling, Hertz acts confused and asks exactly what the prince is referring to. Callian clarifies, is he fond of the name Valken, or does it sound familiar? Elon smiles, watching the silent tension between the two. You can practically feel the drama. Hertz insists it is a fine name. Suddenly, Elon raises a powerful barrier. He is stunned to learn about their dark history. He asks if he should withdraw his recommendation of the man. Callian refuses. Elon points out the risk if the prince's words are true. If Hertz truly killed the original Callian, how can they trust him now? The prince knows Hertz has changed, just as their situation has. Still, letting a past killer walk free feels incredibly dangerous. Somewhere nearby, Hertz shivers. Later, Callian meets Baron Palun. The prince welcomes him warmly and invites the nervous noble to sit down. Callian apologizes for hiding his identity and dropping in unannounced. Palun bows low, deeply honored that the prince sought him out. He notes that Callian has always kept his distance from the nobility. This secret visit shows the prince is trying to prevent dangerous gossip. Callian decides to skip the pleasantries and get right to business. He is here to claim his reward for saving the merchant's life, straight to the point. He asks what the massive Palun Emporium is willing to offer. Palun explains that his trade empire has expanded into diamonds and horses. But he knows that is not what Callian wants. The Baron admits he does not have a worthy trade yet. Palun confesses he still lacks a truly unique offering for the prince. Callian simply smiles at him. Then he asks a surprising question. Can Palun manage something far larger than just his current merchant guild? Baron confidently replies that with the right gold and staff, absolutely. Callian smirks, stating he has more than enough of both. But there is a catch. The powerful Bryson family has them too. Palun is stunned, believing only the prince held such immense backing. A brief, heavy silence falls, then Callian laughs, enjoying the merchant's reaction. He agrees that Bryson is wealthy, but Palun has a brilliant counterpoint. If they match Bryson's funding, the enemy will not stand a chance. Callian drops a bombshell. They are going to form a private mage division. Gold and wizards are ready, but they desperately need administration. Palun realizes the truth and asks if this is his ultimate duty. Callian smiles and confirms this massive task is the price of his life. Though slightly terrified, the Baron immediately vows to get to work. The prince smiles. His master plan is working. Talk about a total genius. He was fated to die after his 15th birthday, but he changed destiny. At last he had trustworthy allies, but something was missing. All that was missing was Sisvanian's will and the Rosalita. And Callian quietly wondered why all of this was happening. The venue was breathtaking. Everything was absolutely perfect. He spotted Prince Planche leaning silently against a massive pillar. Smiling warmly, Callian greeted him, noting it had been a long separation. The second prince, however, completely refused to respond to his greeting. Planche ignored him. Callian simply decided to walk past. Planche suddenly muttered a cruel insult behind his back. Callian looked back, seeing the arrogant prince standing there. The young prince refused to tolerate this blatant disrespect. He firmly reminded the second prince of his real name. Planche smiled mockingly, repeating the name with clear disbelief. He claimed this was not the Callian he knew. He even talked back to others. Suddenly, Planche approached him quickly. He demanded to know his true identity, catching Callian completely off guard. Callian stood stunned, his mind racing to his secret past life. He could never forget that Planche was the tyrant who destroyed Secretia. Secretia was completely ruined, so he had to remain patient. He must wait until he secured Sisvanian's will before taking action. Smiling, Callian told Planche he was talking nonsense. The second prince merely stared back with intense fury. Later, Callian's master pointed out that Planche's suspicion made sense. After all, the tyrant was cruel, but he was certainly no fool. Callian was confused, looking at his master in silence. He asked if the second prince was really such a scoundrel. The master confirmed it, saying that was exactly how everyone saw him. Callian smiled softly, admitting that was how he saw him too. Playing dumb had completely failed, because Planche clearly did not believe him. So how would they convince him otherwise, the master wondered. Callian agreed, admitting his master had a very good point. The old mage watched his young apprentice thoughtfully. He knew keeping the promise to live differently would not be easy. Snapping Callian out of his thoughts, the mage offered a ring. He offered it as a lifeline whenever Callian needed an ear. Callian asked if the ring possessed any communication magic. His master confirmed he had infused it with his own power. But it would fail near Sisvanian's strong magic. Places like the castle would block it, but otherwise it worked. Callian thanked him, grateful to stay connected to his master. The mage asked what still worried him at this ball. Callian smiled, asking if his master truly trusted these people. Soon after, a man introduced himself as Commander Urin. He led the legendary Siegfried Knights. The commander swore his knights would protect the young prince. They finally reached the Sysvanian nest deep within the Siegfried family territory. Callian silently notes that such tight security is exactly what you expect here. Even so, the sheer scale of the defense wall genuinely surprises him. His personal servant, Ian, happens to be the oldest son of this noble house. Ian politely asks the prince if he needs anything before departure. Callian gently rests a hand on Ian's shoulder, requesting a simple drink. Ian asks if water is fine, but the nearby knights look absolutely furious. With a sigh, Ian quickly suggests a warm cup of tea instead. Callian agrees with a nod, thanking his servant as Ian goes to fetch it. Turning to the watching guards, the prince simply flashes a smug grin. The knights boil with anger, hating how easily he orders their young master around. Meanwhile, Manhwa, Kyrie, and Hina watch everything in absolute disbelief. Mage quietly wonders why Callian is actively trying to make more enemies. It was a rare chance, a chance to witness Sigmund's legendary will. Meanwhile, the entire kingdom is busy celebrating Callian's special day. Crowds gather to witness the grand coming-of-age ceremony for their young prince. Even Lady Planche is in attendance, though her expression is completely sour. Noticeably absent is the queen, who completely skips the public gathering. She stays in her private chambers, while Callian parades through the cheering crowd. Catching Manhwa's eye, the two share a brief, knowing smile. Passing through the massive gates, the trial of Rosalita officially begins. The king admits he is worried given Callian's past accident, suggesting accompaniment. But the mage calmly responds that there is absolutely nothing to worry about. There is no danger. In fact, he is more worried about internal threats. Setting his teacup down, the king sighs that the mage's attitude is as blunt as ever. He flatly points out it is not a compliment, asking if he truly feels no worry. The mage sighs, noting silently that the king has always been overly anxious about everything. Still, things have gone remarkably well despite all the royal worries. Breaking the silence, the mage tells the king he is simply speaking the truth. The king quickly snaps back, saying that is exactly what worries him the most. Meanwhile, riding deep into the woods, the prince examines his mysterious new ring. Callian grows highly curious about its power and tries whispering a few questions. The ring stays dead silent, so Ian speaks up instead. He mentions that the recent palace deliveries have thrown everyone into absolute chaos. Suggesting a chat to pass the time, Callian dryly blames Ian for the mess. The prince notes his servant is the real cause of all this recent stress. Ian insists he is just trying his absolute best to keep his master entertained. He then turns to the accompanying knights, requesting their full attention. Ian explains that the court mage formally declared Callian lacks any magical talent. To make matters worse, his swordsmanship is barely enough for basic self-defense. This means he is basically a delicate flower, so they must protect him fiercely. The elite knights look incredibly disappointed to hear their master speak this way. Ian then reminds them that their journey to Latlan will take a few more hours. He asks if they should halt for a brief rest, but Callian suddenly freezes. Then a sudden noise, a strange rustling, cuts their conversation short. Instantly, the knights drew their swords, snapping into high alert at the sudden noise. Kyrie and the mage quickly stepped in front to shield the prince. Watching where the sound came from, Callian doubted they actually needed such caution. Right on cue, a tiny figure frantically scrambled out of the dense bushes. She was running desperately, screaming at the top of her lungs for help. It was just a terrified little elf, and Callian gently asked for her name. Instead, she begged for food, leaving the guards shocked by Callian's gentle attitude. He kindly asked the young elf if she had come here looking for food. He wanted to know why a small child was wandering all alone in this forest. Shaking with immense fear, the little girl whispered that she was only hiding. Callian instantly realized there was something deeply off about this entire situation. When a knight asked what they should do next, Callian told him to feed her. But right at that moment, another rustle echoed from deep within the trees. Turning toward the sound, the prince scolded the elf for not warning them sooner. He muttered that she should have mentioned if someone was actively chasing her. Just then, a rider on a large horse broke through the dark tree line. Callian quickly tossed his own cloak over the shivering elf, shielding her. He told Kyrie to hide her, while a knight demanded the newcomer identify himself. The rider claimed he was pursuing a thief, asking if they had seen anyone. Specifically, he wanted a strange child, but the knight denied seeing any kid. The guard ordered the man to leave, but the rider noticed Kyrie acting suspicious. Sensing they were hiding someone, the rider claimed he had no wish to fight. He only wanted to retrieve what was his, asking for permission to search. Just then, several glowing lights began to flicker deep inside the surrounding forest. Before the knight could answer, Callian cut in to ask what they sought. The stranger described his target as a young elf, unaware of the trap closing. Without missing a beat, Callian casually gave him the permission to search. Hearing this, the little elf shivered, absolutely terrified of being handed over. The rider walked his horse toward Kyrie, but as he passed, Callian whispered softly. He told him to keep moving forward and absolutely, under no circumstances, look back. The prince warned that the surrounding guards would not protect anyone tonight. Their actual targets were the rider and the child hidden behind him. The second the kid is verified, lethal arrows will rain from that direction. But the rider ignored the warning and turned, immediately seeing the forest start glowing. A massive barrage of sharp arrows instantly flew straight toward his head. Amazingly, every single arrow was shattered to pieces before hitting its mark. Callian had leaped forward, deflecting the barrage with his sword and tackling him. He pinned the rider flat to the grass, getting him out of the archer's line of sight. Pressing him down, Callian dryly noted that he explicitly told him not to look. As more arrows rained down, a knight yelled to form a shield around the prince. Instantly, the mage Hertz stepped in, casting a powerful defensive magic spell. A massive barrier materialized and deflected the arrows, while Hertz watched the enemy retreat. The commander ordered his men to give chase, but warned them not to scatter. Seeing the volley stop, Callian figured the hidden archers decided to flee. Getting off the dirty ground, the traveler realized just how close he came to death. The young prince had completely lowered his guard, so Hertz quickly grabbed the elf beside Kyrie. Intending to rush over and protect him, approaching him, Hertz asked if he was okay. He suddenly screamed, warning the prince of the charging assassin. Kyrie desperately yelled out across the noisy battlefield, telling the prince to protect his own back. But the attacker froze in shock. The young royal actually parried the blow. He did it with a tiny dagger, then he immediately countered with magic. A deadly magic spell slammed directly into the attacker's chest, causing him to suffer intense pain. The assassin collapsed, screaming in agony. Nearby, the knights stared in absolute disbelief. Wait, since when can he cast spells? The knights are completely speechless. Meanwhile, his loyal servant Ian rushed over in a massive panic, desperately calling out to him. He asked if the prince was all right, relieved that they were safe. But then he scolded him, asking why he charged ahead without protection. After all, Ian firmly believed the young prince only possessed some very basic, defensive swordsmanship skills. He was convinced his master was absolutely hopeless when it came to magic. Yet the knights could only replay the mind-blowing scene they just witnessed. They quickly realized Ian's soft words did not match the prince's terrifying combat skills at all. If their prince was just a delicate flower, as Ian often claimed, then what kind of wild flower could brutally destroy a powerful and seasoned enemy like that? A few minutes later, the trembling young elf still looked absolutely terrified. The prince slowly approached her, pulled off her hood, and coldly announced they needed to talk. He stared down at her with a stern expression. She instantly panicked. She immediately blurted out that Luca did it, and she knew nothing. In fact, the nervous elf kept answering random questions before the prince could even ask them. She claimed she had no idea who stole it, blaming those thugs. The prince pinched his nose, looking completely exhausted by her chaotic babbling. He promptly gestured for his personal mage to step forward and quickly handle the chaotic situation. His orders were to sort through her words since she kept oversharing. The personal mage quickly bowed, reassuring the prince that he would thoroughly handle the entire matter. While the elf cheered, the mage looked completely stunned by what he discovered. She actually worked in the deep Hiraska forest. The mage explained her name was Silas Tian Ureha, but the elf quickly interrupted him again. She proudly declared that her name meant the spirit of suppressed words. The mage continued, explaining that her companion Luca had stolen the item. Luca took the treasure from those dangerous thugs, and she got separated while rapidly fleeing them. That was exactly when she ran into the prince during the chase. She also claimed she had absolutely no idea why she kept blabbing before anyone even asked. When the prince tried to speak, she cut him off again immediately. She confidently claimed his guess was completely wrong, so he just let the mage continue speaking. The mage stepped back, the annoying elf followed him like a shadow. She kept pestering him. Meanwhile, Ian quietly asked the prince about his plans. The prince replied that she would be instantly hunted down if they parted ways right here. They should just drop her off near the forest. Hearing this, Ian wondered. Would his master actually resolve this entire mess? The prince firmly declined. They had a very long journey ahead of them, so getting involved made absolutely zero sense. Instead, he decided to leave the entire investigation to the local lord. Ian estimates they will arrive around dinner, but the knight leader suddenly interrupts. He asks if His Highness has a minute, explaining that something is off. There is something highly suspicious among the attacker's gear that demands inspection. The prince wonders what it is, and the knight passes over a wrapped cloth. Unwrapping the bundle, the young prince freezes, completely stunned by the contents. Startled, Callian asks if they really had that specific item. The knight confirms it, asking if the prince recognizes this dangerous substance. Recognize it, it is impossible for him to forget this deadly poison. This is the exact poison he once swallowed himself, and he needs answers now. He demands to see the prisoner immediately, while the captured man scoffs nearby. The captor admits he thought the prince was just a spoiled rich kid. But clearly he was wrong. Callian slowly approaches the bound man. Callian dryly agrees, noting he is actually a far more precious noble son after all. Gripping the lethal poison, the prince gets straight to the point without games. He holds the toxin up, asking the attacker if he knows what this is. The attacker just looks completely clueless, not understanding him at all. He explains everyone carried one, and he merely stole a few for himself. He thought it was valuable. The prince then asks what they were seeking. The man honestly has no idea, so the prince asks who they are. The thief mutters that he could not see them because of their masks. Callian pushes for any small detail, but the man shakes his head. Something about the man's anxious behavior seems incredibly off to Callian. Leaning in, he whispers that the man clearly is not protecting them out of loyalty. He asks what the real issue is, promising to resolve it if he cooperates. He tells the man to trust him, as a wealthy, influential noble can solve anything. The prisoner is completely stunned by this young child's bold confidence. Quietly whispering, he confesses that his wife is currently in Hansen village. Callian understands the leverage and instantly promises to protect her. He swears she will remain safe, asking what item the invaders dropped. The man describes the item as a transparent marble, small as a fingernail. He has no clue what it does, but heard a priest was needed to check it. A Tencel priest had to inspect it. Suddenly, the young prince realizes the truth. Believe it or not, these invaders are hunting for a sacred relic. Priests of Tencel use these legendary artifacts to artificially restore divine power. That explains why Tencel is greedily hoarding as many relics as possible. The piece fits. Still, how did these attackers get their hands on that poison? This deadly toxin is exclusively used by the ruthless agents of Secretia. They carry it to end their own lives whenever a mission fails. He got the poison through the White Eagle, but denies knowing the leader. While he cannot identify them, he does remember their leader's code name. Callian asks for the title, and the thief mutters, Blue Wagtail. The prince gasps in shock. That code name strikes a massive chord. It is the name of a pet bird belonging to Baron's own father. What is that man doing here? Later, they finally cross into Latland territory. Rain pours down endlessly as the prince continues his quiet interrogation. He muses that the heavy downpour might actually be a good thing since it stopped them from advancing ever since dinner. He sets down his goblet, eagerly claiming he has been waiting for this day. Absolutely thrilled, the man declares hosting the prince is a massive honor. This host is Count Hale Latland, lord of this entire territory. Count Hale, still wearing a massive grin, continues babbling about how the heavens themselves are telling him to serve. But while the young prince quietly thinks this lord talks way too much, he suddenly recalls a crucial conversation he had with his advisor, Ian, earlier. Ian had asked if he remembered Count Hale. The noble was actually one of those who had sent him a fancy gift, but the prince rejected it and sent it back. In fact, Hale was right on that list of people whose gifts were returned. Ian explained that although Hale originally sided with Prince Randall, he quickly jumped ship. He flipped his loyalty straight to Prince Planche 6 years ago during the war. That massive desert war changed everything, making Hale the perfect definition of an opportunist. Now here is that exact opportunist, still grinning ear to ear in his presence. He carries on about how desperately he has been waiting for the prince's arrival. But the prince knows Hale definitely conspired with Planche last year. Meanwhile, Malcolm Chadish, the butler, looks deeply embarrassed by his master. Suddenly, Hurt slips into the room, requesting a quiet word with the prince. He leans in to whisper a highly urgent piece of news directly to the prince. They have managed to intercept a secret messenger pigeon carrying a warning. Someone tried to alert the Blue Wagtail group that the royals had arrived. No ordinary bird would dare fly through this freezing, pitch-black storm tonight. Oblivious to the sudden tension, Hale asks the silent mage if he wants a warm drink. But the prince cuts him off, flatly declining. He demands to know if there is a Tenzil priest around. Suddenly, Count Hale knocks over a wine bottle on the table. He forces a nervous smile, apologizing and claiming he is just a little drunk. He acts confused, asking if they are discussing that specific priest. Suddenly, his mood flips. The Count rants furiously, demanding to know if they are discussing those absolute, miserable wretches. He scoffs that such trash would never dare enter this remote, quiet place. The prince firmly tells him to calm down, but the Count just keeps shouting. He rants about how evil they are, but before he can finish, the young prince simply snaps his fingers and commands the loudmouth noble to sleep. Hale falls onto the table, fast asleep. And trust me, everyone in the room is utterly stunned by this sudden magic show. He calmly explains he simply could not tolerate such absolute disrespect any longer. Later, riding through the night, the prince speaks to Manhwa through his ring. The old mage asks if he truly got tangled up with a dangerous, secret artifact. He warns that his life is in serious danger now, but the prince shrugs it off. He tells Manhwa not to stress so much about his quiet, peaceful retirement. Curious, Manhwa asks just how far the young royal's shadow connections actually reach. The prince proudly replies that he has never failed a single mission in his life. Surely there is no way they failed to recognize the Prince of Caris. He wonders what desperate crisis would make someone use an arrow to send signals. Manhwa advises him to search the areas near Latland where that priest might hide. The old mage adds that tracking down this priest is absolutely vital. He was there to investigate the secret agent's quiet plot with the local priests, inside a random tavern. A quiet woman wiped down the dirty glasses. Suddenly, Prince Callian stepped inside. Greeting her, he explained the men outside had only followed him here. The bartender slowly set her glass down and told him not to worry. She assured him she was not cruel enough to hurt innocent bystanders. The prince noted that he fully expected her to attack them, despite knowing his identity. She shrugged, saying that was exactly why she warned him to stay out of it. The prince then noticed that every customer around them was slumped over unconscious. She pointed out his rashness. Callian just walked straight to her counter. Leaning in, he asked if he counted as involved now. She sighed and nodded. But as she stared at the young prince, she caught a glimpse of his intense red aura. Suddenly, the tension in the room skyrockets, and Callian just slowly smirks. She stared back, asking if the runaway elf she was hunting had already died. She explained that they lost his trail the moment he vanished into the dense forest. If she knew he would cause such a massive headache, she never would have chased him. She hated dealing with messy complications, but since no real damage was done yet, she asked if he would simply walk away and leave her to do her job. If he agreed, she promised she would spare the young elf. Callian picked up a glass. He proposed a trade, answer a few simple questions, and he would happily walk away. First, he demanded to know why she was hunting down a sacred relic. Peering over his cup, he added that she certainly did not look like a priestess. Irritated, she snatched the cup right back and complained that relics were getting expensive. The prince immediately guessed she was acting as a black market broker for them. She admitted that her regular line of work did not pay very well these days. Watching her closely, Callian asked if the buyer of these relics resided in Latland. It made no sense to peddle stolen church property so far inland. It was easier to find priests in Caris, but she claimed this buyer paid more. She explained that no one else matched his prices, and they shared a long history. Callian realized this connection could only mean one thing: a rogue spy. She was dealing with secret agents who peddled classified intel about Caris. To pay for secrets regarding the blue ladybug, those agents were buying relics. That was when Callian noticed she had poured him a glass of wine. Staring at the deep red liquid, he prepared to ask his final question. Meanwhile, in the quiet royal palace, the king demanded to know why the mage had arrived. He joked that he was suddenly being treated like a common street informant. Manhwa smiled, saying he knew the king would be awake at this hour. There was no point hiding things when they both already knew the truth. He asked exactly how many Tencel priests were hiding in Caris. The king frowned, unsure if the mage already knew the answer or was just guessing. Either way, the high representatives of Tencel had arrived specifically for this. Out of the 14 priests, excluding the single one residing in the palace, they wanted to round up the rest to prevent them from demanding more backup. The king shook his head in absolute disgust over the entire situation. After letting them celebrate their long-awaited victory, they dared to point fingers. They acted as if Callian was merely exploiting their sacred priests. Things were pretty grim for Tencel. When Manhwa asked, they hid their situation. But they desperately needed those priests. What would the king do? He commanded his forces to seize every last one of them. The mage explained that Prince Callian requested the location of the priests. This left the king thoroughly baffled by the prince's bizarre question. He questioned why on earth Callian would ask such a thing, especially since the prince had already arrived at the very same spot. Meanwhile, back at the bar, Callian confronted the mysterious woman. Was the buyer Count Hale Latlin? She cryptically replied, who knows. She warned him that his question was far from simple. Callian quickly rode away, realizing the man had played dumb. He hid the priest and pretended to know nothing. He bought expensive relics just to sell intel to Sekrish's agents. Manhwa agreed, confirming the prince had hit the mark. Now they had to get back to the castle immediately. Sensing the heavy urgency, the mage asked what was wrong. Callian revealed that the sleeping spell he used at dinner exposed everything. Count Latlin was faking his drunkenness. Meanwhile, palace drama was brewing. A furious voice was shouting about disrespect in the hallway. It was Ian angrily confronting the butler regarding the prince. He claimed Callian was out walking, but the butler refused to leave. The count apparently wanted to apologize, but Ian was highly skeptical. He snapped at him, demanding if he was covering up insolence. Ian was absolutely furious and asked, since when does a butler get to interrogate where a prince goes? The butler shook in fear, completely at a loss. Ian silently worried, knowing the prince had not yet made it back. When the butler kept pestering, Ian ordered him to get out. Suddenly, the bedroom door swung open at that very moment. The prince appeared, demanding if he was even allowed to rest. Both men froze. Callian immediately called Ian totally incompetent. I told you to make an excuse. How hard can that be? Ian apologized, playing along with the sudden angry act. He claimed the butler was simply being far too stubborn. With that, Callian slammed the door shut with force. Outside, the panicked butler bowed repeatedly and offered his apologies. He quickly left, leaving Callian leaning against the door. He let out a relieved breath but suddenly shuddered in surprise. He realized he had spoken just like his worst enemy, feeling disgusted. Ian slipped inside, remarking that his master returned quite early. And sneaking through the window, no less, Callian sighed heavily. He ignored the tease, asking if anyone else had been snooping. Ian replied that only the annoying butler had made a move. Though he couldn't help but chuckle at the window escape. He remembered seeing the prince jump out like a thief. Even though it was up on the third floor, Callian chuckled softly in response. He understood completely. The young prince then asked why Ian seemed so incredibly irritated today. Such irritation was completely foreign to him back at the palace, Ian explained. That stubborn butler simply refused to listen, even after being told that the young prince went out. He just kept asking when he would return. Callian found the behavior strange. Ian explained that the butler seemed far too interested in the prince's schedule. The suspicious butler cared much more about when he would return than where he actually went. Later on, the prince discussed the situation with the mage, explaining his suspicions. The count definitely suspected they were secretly investigating something. They were absolutely right that slimy count was not actually drunk. The clever mage wondered why. Callian believed the man was putting on such an elaborate act. The prince explained that the highly anticipated swap of sacred relics with the Blue Marikita group was set for today. That explained the Blue Marikita being here. The wine was Just a convenient excuse to slip away, but Callian ruined everything by putting him to sleep. When the scheming count realized Callian had left the castle, he sent his butler. Spying, the prince explained. The mage finally understood and asked why the count wanted that sacred relic so badly. Callian replied that Hale likely planned to trade it for some major favor from Tenzel, Prince Randall's mother's homeland. The mage added that while maintaining a secret relationship with Randall, he also played both sides with Blanche and sent secret gifts to Callian. The prince added that he even sold information from Cyrus to Secretia's secret agents. What a cunning snake! Helping the fugitive Solas was only the beginning of his schemes. The prince continued. The man hunting her actually revealed Blue Mariquita's identity. That was how Callian discovered Hale's secret shipments relics to Tenzel to bribe Randall using the Blue Mariquita. If all this is not just some coincidence, the prince paused, then added that the ring would not stop until tomorrow. He would break the traitor. Inside his room, Hale shattered a delicate glass in absolute fury. He cursed himself for not realizing Callian had become such a massive nuisance. After rejecting those royal gifts, Hale was absolutely certain that the prince had used magic, as only a spell could cause that deep sleep. His plans were ruined, all because of his arrogant attitude. And because the mage Manisal backed him, how dared a commoner think he belonged on the same level as real royalty? He cursed that stupid Selech for not killing the boy sooner. He had worked so incredibly hard to build strong ties with the nobility, even spending a massive fortune bribing the greedy Marquis Brisson. They had promised him fertile territory on the borders of Caris, but now everything was changing. Just as the count fumed, his butler quietly stepped through the doorway asking for permission. Hale threw his heavy body onto the couch, demanding to know if the butler had finally contacted the Blue Mariquita yet. The servant nervously admitted he failed. Enraged, Count Hale hurled a glass straight at his subordinate's face, screaming terrible curses while demanding to know if that useless fool could do anything right. With the heavy rain falling outside, it meant that annoying royal half-blood would stay another night. Terrified, the butler asked if he should. They had to postpone the transaction, making Hale absolutely furious. There was nothing he could do, especially with the prince and his guards lurking nearby. He shouted for a maid to bring his clothes, still fuming with rage. He swore he would teach Prince Callian a harsh lesson in manners. The next day, Callian sat calmly at the dining table having lunch, while Count Hale watched him closely. The count couldn't believe how relaxed the prince seemed, acting like nothing had even happened. To Hale, his prestigious title as a count demanded respect. Nobility would never tolerate magic being used against one of their own. His royal blood would not protect him from what was coming. Hale quickly apologized for his behavior from the night before. Callian shrugged it off as no problem, prompting the count to bring up the magic. But Callian immediately cut him off before he finished. He calmly admitted to casting a spell because the count was unbearable. Smiling, Callian casually told the furious count not to worry. He figured it must be his first time hosting a royal family member. He even teased that the count must have been incredibly nervous. Hale forced a smile, but inside, he was absolutely fuming with rage. The prince then mentioned he was tired of investigating his recent attacker. Hale asked if he meant the man they brought along. Callian confirmed it, revealing they had uncovered a treasure trove of information. Hale instantly panicked. He had to find out what they knew. But before he could ask, Callian dropped a single hint, the name of a bird. The shock made the count spit his wine right out. Talk about a satisfying reaction. A panicked butler rushed over to help, but Hale violently shoved him away. He snapped at his servant, refusing to be interrupted during their talk. Callian mused that while details still needed sorting, Hale should definitely know. After all, this dangerous attack had occurred right on the count's own lands. Hale stood up and promised his full assistance, claiming he would never tolerate royal blood being targeted on his watch. Inwardly, he was seething. There was no way he would let this kid ruin his domain. He vowed to find Callian's weakness and crush him before his secrets were exposed. Just then, a knight entered, requesting an urgent word with the prince. Watching them whisper, Hale realized he had to kick Callian out of his territory immediately. But the prince broke his train of thought with a smirk. He revealed the urgent message was actually meant for the count. Someone wanted to speak with Hale, leading them both deep into the dungeon. The grim prison-like setting made Hale's blood boil with anger. He hated being dragged to such a place, but Callian just watched him coldly. The prince knew his rage, but the trap was already set. Hale had walked right into it, unaware of what happened the night before. Down in the cell, the locked-up assassin had begged for news about his wife. Callian assured him his family was safe, giving his solemn word as a prince. He promised no harm would come to them, keeping them out of this mess. The prisoner asked why the prince was here, and Callian gave a cold answer. Deep down, the assassin already knew his fate. There was only one outcome. Execution. He had dared to strike at royalty, and his time was officially up. Once the investigation ended, he would be dragged off to Caris and executed. Even if his life were spared, Callian explained he would get zero medical care. His arm would rot away, leading to a slow and agonizing death. Shivering, the prisoner asked what the prince was actually trying to get at. Callian leaned in and offered him a secret way out of this nightmare. He could run far away from this territory, finding a peaceful place to hide. But only if you cooperate. In return, I will limit your sentence to just losing your arm. Hearing this, the man gasped, his entire face turning pale with sheer terror. Through it all, the prince kept his gaze entirely cold and unwavering. Desperate, the man surrendered to the deal, begging to know what he must do. Back in the present, the man admitted why he summoned the count. He confessed that Marikita was actually a covert spy sent straight from Secretia. She had been selling stolen goods to a regular client for a very long time. Callian pointed out how incredibly bizarre that was, calling the setup highly suspicious. A deal like that only works if a double agent is pulling the strings. Imagine a massive traitor selling state secrets. Do you agree, Count Latlin? The count looked completely cornered, his mouth hanging open in sheer panic. Callian stayed completely silent, waiting for him to make a desperate move. He just needed the count to slip up and hand over the final proof. Later, inside the palace, the butler threw himself at the prince's feet. He wept, claiming he was only following his master's direct commands. While he knew he was guilty, he still begged the prince for mercy. He always suspected Count Latlin would eventually get caught, but not like this. This entire nightmare had spun completely and utterly out of his control. Callian calmly looked down at him and asked if he was a priest of Tencel. The question struck the butler like lightning, leaving him utterly speechless. Callian kept pushing, accusing him of being the one smuggling the holy relics. He only submitted to Count Latlin because the count held a dark secret over him. The butler confessed that if Tencel found out, they would execute him instantly. Callian was genuinely shocked to learn the butler was the one selling them. So the count was not actually trying to buy the relics. The prince quickly demanded to know the identity of the wealthy buyer. According to the butler, he sold them to Renan Brisson, Queen Celis's brother. He was presenting the holy artifacts straight to Tencel. This meant Renan Brisson had formed a dangerous alliance with Tencel. By doing so, he betrayed Blanche and threw his support behind Randall. He turned his back completely on Secretia and his own Brisson family legacy. Later, Callian discussed the massive development with the powerful mage, Manhwa. The small trap he set for Count Latlin had caught a much bigger fish. When the mage asked what their next move was, the prince just grinned. He wanted to cause an absolute storm that would shake the entire kingdom. They needed to bring Ramen into the loop immediately, and the mage agreed. But first, Callian ordered Manhwa to write a letter to Count Latlin. Callian also told his guards to treat the prisoner's severed arm. After all, that horrific wound would take a very long time to fully heal. It would be better to amputate it. He then tells them to feed the mixture to the man. He shows him the poison. The knight nods, promising to deliver the grim warning. Next, the prince orders Kyrie to head directly to Hansen village, locate the target's wife, and secure her in a safe location. Just as the prisoner takes the dose, Callian is interrupted. A young elf girl suddenly bursts straight into his room, breathlessly announcing her arrival. She came with Heine, completely uninvited, before the prince can even question this sudden intrusion. The elf quickly begs him not to get angry at Heine. She then immediately dashes over, right toward the little bird, leaving Callian sighing because this is really not his problem. She starts happily playing with the tiny creature. That's when Ian quietly asks the prince what his plans are for the pigeon and if he intends to bring it along. Callian calmly shakes his head. Ian smiles and asks if he's already planning how to return the bird to its rightful owner. Soon, Heine joins in on the fun. The two men simply watch them play. Then, Callian promises Heine that he'll get her a bird of her own once they return to the palace, since this one must go back. He has to return it tonight. Heine worries that Merlin might object to pets in their quarters. But Callian just offers a soft smile, calling it a shame. He then asks Heine to help him release the messenger bird right after he finishes his dinner, reminding her to make sure she leaves the window wide open. Heine looks pretty skeptical. That's when Callian reveals he's actually expecting a guest. A few hours pass, and everyone finally departs. Now, only the prince remains to face what's coming. He reads quietly, waiting. Suddenly, a faint rustle echoes from the window. Snapping his book shut, the prince notes his guest has arrived much earlier than expected. The mysterious visitor mockingly says she was deeply moved by his letter. Its message was simple: if she didn't want her secret activities exposed to Nalan Shaw, she had to meet him. This daring intruder is Mariquita Azul. She demands to know why he is blackmailing her. Callian pulls a paper from his book explaining that he possesses concrete proof that Hale is trading illegal relics and selling confidential information. He promises to keep her secret if she hands over that evidence. Mariquita simply stares at him in tense silence. Callian coolly asks if that is her final answer, and she confirms it. She says she hates complicated arrangements. In a flash, she fires multiple magical projectiles directly at him. The prince is quite surprised to see these magical orbs flying his way. As he quickly summons a defensive barrier, he remembers that in his past life, this assassin strictly relied on a sword. The magical blasts are instantly deflected, hitting the walls with a loud crash. Outside, the royal guards immediately scramble, realizing there is an intruder. Inside, Callian quickly locks the door from within and commands them to stay back. He asks the woman if she truly came here tonight with the sole intention of killing him, and if there is any other way out. She steps forward, declaring she has no other choice. She unsheathes her blade and lunges, but Callian skillfully blocks the furious strike. He knows his standard iron sword is absolutely no match for her deadly aura, meaning he has to end this duel quickly without relying on his own. Callian manages to land a sharp counterstrike, forcing Mariquita to leap back and guard herself with her blade. He keeps up the pressure until he successfully disarms her completely, but when he least expects it, she still has one more magical orb to attack him. She hurls the projectile. It is too fast to deflect without using aura, so he coats his blade. Channeled their aura to slice the magic orb clean in half, but that move shattered his blade completely. Seeing him effortlessly slice the orb, the woman gasped and asked if he was a master swordsman. Silence fell between them. The young prince hesitated, weighing his options, before suddenly addressing her by her true name, Isla. Shock washed over her just as she went to demand how he knew. The prince grabbed her face as she struggled and questioned his actions. The prince forced her mouth open. Looking inside, he realized that the expected poison was missing. Callian immediately demanded she speak up. Isla warily asked if she would go free if she talked. I heard secretions are tough, Callian remarked, but you are different. He quietly wondered if she had always been this kind of person, or if something changed her. Isla, meanwhile, kept pushing for her release. She pointed out that a master swordsman hiding his skills with a cheap guard blade was obviously doing everything possible to keep his skills hidden. If you want to keep your secret, she warned, let me go. Otherwise, I will tell the knights outside exactly what I saw today. She threatened him. In the past timeline, she was a loyal master swordsman. But the prince knew this girl before him was entirely different now. Grabbing her collar, he snapped, if you did not want me dying, then you should not have gone and tragically died right in front of my own eyes. Her eyes widened at his words as a heavy silence filled the room. He let go of her clothes, warning her not to expect any favors. Her secret was not worth her life anyway. He demanded real evidence instead. Give me proof, he said, and I will stop questioning you. Otherwise, the White Eagle Knights would handle the interrogation, which terrified Isla. Meanwhile, Count Hale was furiously cursing, wondering where his contact had gone. He had not seen Malcolm yet, who was supposed to bring a crucial letter. The message warned the Count that he would need a representative soon. Shady business deals had apparently been explained directly to Queen Celis. Everything they had been selling was out in the open, leaving no worries. This threatening letter was penned by none other than Elon Mainisel. Count Hale panicked, wondering if the mage knew about the sacred relics. Given the letter, he definitely did. Hale spat, cursing the arrogant mage. It was infuriating to bow down to that low-born commoner prince. They probably expected him to crawl back begging, but they highly underestimated him. He had already made his own preparations behind their backs. Smiling, Count Hale walked straight into a room filled with gleaming treasures. Looking over his massive wealth, he felt he could still hoard more. Walking to his safe, he brushed it off. He had better assets. Inside a hidden box sat his most prized possession, sacred relics. With these, he could easily buy his way to absolute power and wealth. But as he gloated over his plans, hurts slowly materialized in the shadows behind him. Before the Count could close the box, it vanished instantly from his grasp. Spinning around in pure shock, he saw the box in the hands of Hertz. It was actually invisibility magic. Hertz nods, revealing his true identity as the prince. That was Callian's very own loyal mage, who felt incredibly grateful that the Count discovered the incriminating evidence himself. He ironically added that the Count had no reason to worry, boldly promising he would personally take complete care of both that highly annoying mage and the foolish commoner prince. After that, the mage brought the sacred relics to Callian. Hertz revealed that he successfully secured every single stolen page containing highly sensitive information leaked straight from Caris regarding Hale's relic trade. The prince smiled warmly and thanked the loyal mage, noting that their massive, chaotic trap was now almost completely finished. Suddenly, Ian burst in, desperately calling out for the prince, urging him to look outside. Right then, golden armored knights arrived in a massive, armored cavalry unit that was quickly approaching their current location. The prince looked through the window, instantly recognizing King Callias' personal knight. He immediately wondered why these royal protectors, meant to guard the king, Kyrie, were standing here.